What if the roots of human civilization were far stranger than we ever imagined? Hidden beneath the sands of time, buried in clay tablets and crumbling ruins, lie secrets that have puzzled scholars for centuries. Mysteries that science still struggles to explain. The ancient Sumerians, the world's first recorded civilization, left behind more than just stories and monuments. They left a map to a past that feels almost otherworldly. Imagine cities rising with astonishing precision, astronomical knowledge that predates modern telescopes, and artifacts that hint at technologies far beyond what we thought possible. Who were these people, and how did they acquire wisdom that continues to baffle even the most advanced minds today? What truths lie encoded in their myths, their mathematics, their art, truths that challenge everything we believe about history, humanity, and the cosmos itself? For over 3 hours, we will explore these enigmas, tracing every clue, decoding every riddle, and venturing into the shadows of a civilization that may have known more than we ever will. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into the lost world of the Sumerians, where mystery reigns and every discovery raises more questions than answers. In the dim light of a quiet museum gallery, a series of clay tablets rests behind protective glass, their surfaces etched with thousands of tiny cuneiform symbols. The edges of the tablets are worn, chipped in places, evidence of centuries, perhaps millennia, of handling, of being buried and rediscovered. The tablets are attributed to the ancient Sumerians, a civilization that emerged over 5,000 years ago in the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Yet even as scholars have deciphered much of their language, the tablets dedicated to Shamash, the Sumerian sun god and deity of justice, continue to raise questions that stretch beyond conventional understanding. These are not ordinary records. Many of the tablets contain detailed astronomical observations, calculations of solar and lunar cycles, and intricate charts mapping celestial movements with an accuracy that seems extraordinary, even by today's standards. Shamash, often depicted as a radiant figure standing above the earth with rays of light emanating from his shoulders, was more than a symbolic deity. He was a measure of order and law, a divine observer whose influence extended both in myth and in the meticulous records left by priests and scribes. But why did they record these observations in such painstaking detail, and what knowledge might they have possessed that allowed them to measure time and movement in the heavens so precisely? Some of the tablets appear to describe events that, at first glance, align perfectly with known astronomical phenomena: eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and the cycles of the moon. Yet scattered among these seemingly ordinary entries are symbols and sequences that defy easy interpretation. Certain lines hint at concepts that have no clear modern equivalent, references to heavenly paths or rays of judgment, and mentions of distances and durations that do not correspond to any known measurements of their time. Could these have been allegorical, or were they documenting observations that we are still unable to fully comprehend? Historians suggest that the Sumerians were exceptional mathematicians and astronomers, a claim well supported by other surviving texts. Their sexagesimal system, which underpins our division of hours, minutes, and seconds, demonstrates an advanced grasp of mathematics and geometry. Yet the tablets of Shamash push this sophistication further. Some scholars propose that these records may encode predictions, celestial patterns extending centuries into the future, or even attempts to model cosmic forces in a symbolic language. If so, how did they develop such foresight without telescopes or modern computational tools? And if the tablets were meant as guides or warnings, what exactly were they intended to convey to those who followed? The mystery deepens when examining the physical characteristics of the tablets themselves. Certain inscriptions are so precise that they appear almost machine-made, the grooves perfectly uniform, the cuneiform signs sharply defined. In some cases, The clay exhibits unusual properties, tiny inclusions of minerals not native to the surrounding region, suggesting that either the material or the techniques used to craft them were carefully selected, perhaps even experimental. Could these details hint at specialized knowledge of materials science, lost to time, or are they simply evidence of the Sumerians' remarkable skill? Adding to the intrigue is the occasional overlap between the tablet's content and myths from neighboring cultures. References to Shamash appear in later Babylonian and Assyrian texts, often linked to concepts of law, cosmic order, and moral judgment. Some researchers argue that these stories preserve fragments of ancient knowledge, while others see them as symbolic reinterpretations. But the Sumerian tablets themselves resist easy categorization. They straddle the line between record and ritual, between observation and philosophy, leaving modern scholars to wonder whether the knowledge contained within was purely practical, deeply spiritual, or perhaps both. There are even more speculative theories circulating among those who study these artifacts. Some suggest that the Sumerians may have had contact with unknown sources of knowledge, hinted at subtly in the phrasing of certain passages. Others propose that the tablets encode a form of proto-science that modern historians have yet to fully decode, a system of understanding nature, the heavens, and human society that has been largely forgotten. While such ideas remain controversial, the fact that the tablets can support such divergent interpretations is, in itself, a testament to their enigmatic power. As one studies the inscriptions, one cannot help but notice the patience and devotion required to create them. Each line, each wedge-shaped symbol, represents hours of labor and careful thought, a deliberate act intended to preserve knowledge for generations to come. And yet, for all this care, the tablets still conceal more than they reveal. Their patterns and symbols, so meticulously recorded, suggest a civilization that reached for comprehension of the cosmos far beyond its contemporaries, but whose ultimate meaning remains elusive. What, then, were the Sumerians trying to tell us through the tablets of Shamash? Were these simply astronomical logs, divinely inspired calculations, moral treatises, or perhaps something else entirely, messages encoded in clay that transcend time? Even after thousands of years, these questions linger, inviting us to look closer, to read between the lines, and to consider that some secrets of the past may be meant to challenge us as much as they inform us. The tablets sit quietly in their display cases, inert yet alive with possibility. Each mark, each carefully inscribed symbol, is a doorway to a civilization that thrived in the cradle of human history, yet whose understanding of the universe was, in some ways, far more profound than our own. And as we peer into these fragments of a long-vanished world, we are left with the enduring sense that there is still much more to uncover, truths that wait silently beneath the dust, mysteries that call to us across the millennia, daring us to ask, what else has been lost, and what might still lie hidden in the shadows of history? As we leave the cuneiform tablets of Shamash behind, with their meticulous records of celestial movements and divine law, our journey takes us southward along the Persian Gulf, to a region that once held a civilization as enigmatic as the Sumerians themselves. Archaeologists refer to it as Dilmun, a society that flourished in what is now modern-day Bahrain, parts of eastern Saudi Arabia, and the coastal areas of Kuwait and Qatar. Today, the ruins are quiet, scattered fragments of mud brick walls, burial mounds, and stone foundations, often half buried beneath shifting sands. But centuries ago, Dilmun was a thriving hub of trade, culture, and myth, a crossroads connecting the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and beyond. Dilmun is frequently mentioned in Sumerian texts, described as a land of purity and abundance, a kind of earthly paradise where the sacred rivers of the world converge, and where goods and knowledge flowed freely across distant lands. Copper, timber, pearls, and other commodities moved along its ports, linking civilizations through commerce and diplomacy. Yet for all we know from these references, Dilmun itself remains shrouded in uncertainty. Its cities, while partially excavated, reveal no grand palaces comparable to those of Ur or Uruk, and its language and internal governance remain largely undeciphered. What kind of society could wield such influence over trade and myth while leaving so few traces of its own story? The archaeological record presents more questions than answers. Burial sites contain human remains and ceremonial artifacts arranged with deliberate care, suggesting ritual practices of a complexity that is not yet fully understood. In some tombs, bodies appear to have been placed with objects that indicate both spiritual beliefs and social hierarchy, yet the symbolism of these objects is ambiguous. Were they tokens of an afterlife, markers of status, or something more cryptic, perhaps a form of encoded knowledge? The sparse material evidence leaves room for speculation, and the scarcity of inscriptions makes Dilmun a tantalizing puzzle, hovering on the edges of historical clarity. Some of the most intriguing finds are the trade seals, small, intricately carved stones bearing images of animals, gods, and abstract motifs. These seals appear across regions from Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley, suggesting that Dilmun was not isolated but part of a sophisticated network of exchange. Yet why do these seals frequently incorporate symbols that resist straightforward interpretation? Could they represent a written language lost to time, or a set of spiritual and commercial codes known only to an elite class? The answers are elusive, leaving modern researchers to wonder whether Dilmun's power lay as much in secrecy and knowledge as in material wealth. Dilmun also occupies a unique place in myth. In Sumerian cosmology, it is sometimes depicted as the dwelling of the gods, a pristine realm untouched by strife. Later legends, including those of the Epic of Gilgamesh, seem to echo this concept, casting Dilmun as a kind of intermediary between the mortal world and the divine. Were these stories purely allegorical, or do they hint at a real place whose mysteries were known even to its neighbors? If Dilmun was considered a sacred land, might its apparent invisibility in the archaeological record reflect deliberate concealment or a loss of material over millennia, rather than the absence of significance? Even the geography of Dilmun presents puzzles. While some sites are easily accessible, others lie beneath modern development or submerged under rising sea levels that have altered coastlines over thousands of years. Geologists suggest that the Persian Gulf was significantly shallower in antiquity, potentially exposing land that is now underwater. Could some of Dilmun's cities or ports still lie hidden beneath the waves, preserving clues that would dramatically reshape our understanding of early civilization? If so, what stories might these sunken ruins hold about trade, culture, and perhaps knowledge that has not survived elsewhere? Scholars debate Dilmun's rise and fall with caution. Unlike the Sumerian city-states, which left abundant records, Dilmun seems to fade from historical accounts without a clear narrative of decline. Some attribute this to shifting trade routes or environmental change, others to assimilation by neighboring powers. Yet the silence of Dilmun's own voice, its near-total absence in inscriptions except where noted by others, remains striking. Could this absence itself be meaningful? A reflection of a culture that operated differently, perhaps prioritizing secrecy, ritual, or knowledge over monumental display? What makes Dilmun endlessly fascinating is its dual nature, at once concrete and intangible, historical and legendary. Archaeology reveals settlements, artifacts, and graves. Texts evoke paradise, trade, and divine favor. The more we learn, the more questions emerge. Who truly controlled the wealth and knowledge that flowed through Dilmun? What cultural, spiritual, or technological achievements have vanished beneath millennia of time and tide? And perhaps most importantly, what connections between Dilmun Sumer and distant civilizations remain to be uncovered, threads of human history that may yet alter our understanding of the ancient world. As we stand amid the ruins, whether physically or in the imagination, the sense of mystery is profound. The sand shifts, the wind whispers across empty courtyards, and the faint outlines of streets, walls, and ports emerge from memory and stone. Dilmun's puzzle remains unsolved, a civilization both known and unknown, tangible and ethereal. It is a reminder that even in a world we study so meticulously, there are places where history, myth, and possibility converge, and where the past continues to beckon us toward discovery, asking questions we are only beginning to learn how to ask. As we leave behind the sun-drenched plains of Dilmun with their buried ports and elusive myths, our journey turns once more toward Sumer, where another enigma emerges from the depths of history. This time, the mystery is metallic and radiant, small yet profoundly intricate: the Sumerian sun disk. These circular artifacts, often no larger than a human hand, are composed of finely worked gold or copper, etched with geometric patterns and symbols that seem to radiate outward like rays of sunlight. They have been unearthed in temples, tombs, and ceremonial sites, often in close association with depictions of Shamash, the sun god, suggesting a ritualistic or symbolic significance. Yet the question lingers: were these discs purely ceremonial, or might they conceal knowledge that surpasses mere ornamentation? At first glance, the discs appear simple: a central circle surrounded by concentric patterns and fine lines. But closer examination reveals astonishing precision. The grooves are uniform, the spacing of symbols remarkably consistent, and some discs even feature cutouts and holes that align with cardinal directions or astronomical phenomena. Scholars generally interpret these as symbolic representations of the sun, the heavens, or cosmological order, connecting the Sumerian spiritual beliefs to their meticulous observations of the sky. But could there be more? Could these discs have functioned as instruments, tools designed to track time, measure angles, or even model the movement of celestial bodies with a sophistication that modern science has only begun to appreciate? The idea is not as far-fetched as it first seems. Ancient Sumerians were meticulous record keepers, documenting eclipses, lunar cycles, and planetary positions in clay tablets with astonishing accuracy. Their mathematical and geometrical skills, evident in city planning, temple architecture, and even their system of weights and measures, suggest a level of technical understanding that could potentially extend to more complex devices. When viewed in this light, the sun disks appear not merely as ritual objects, but as possible technological instruments, precision-crafted relics whose true function may have been deliberately concealed within layers of symbolism. Some of the discs exhibit markings that seem to correspond with astronomical observations. Certain alignments and notches could indicate solstices, equinoxes, or the movements of Venus and Jupiter, planets of special significance in Sumerian cosmology. If so, these discs might represent one of the earliest examples of human attempts to encode celestial mechanics in portable, tangible form. Could a high priest have used such a disc to perform calculations, to forecast celestial events, or to guide agricultural and ceremonial calendars? The precision required for such tasks would be extraordinary, raising questions about the level of knowledge possessed by the Sumerians and how it might have been transmitted across generations. Even more intriguing are discs that include unusual features: perforations, small raised nodes, or patterns that some researchers suggest could correspond to gear-like mechanisms. While mainstream archaeology generally interprets these as purely symbolic, some engineers and experimental historians have speculated whether these elements hint at proto-mechanical knowledge. Could the Sumerians have understood basic principles of rotation, leverage, or motion, concepts that would not formally appear in documented history until millennia later? If so, the sun disks may represent a fusion of art, astronomy, and early technology, a deliberately encoded bridge between observation and practical application. The mystery deepens when we consider the context in which the disks were found. Many come from temple precincts, resting atop altars or within ceremonial containers. Their placement suggests ritual significance, yet also positions them as central to complex ceremonies, perhaps combining spiritual symbolism with practical function. Were these objects instruments of worship, tools of knowledge, or both? Did they serve as a tangible connection between the earthly and the divine, allowing priests to manipulate and understand the cosmos in ways that remain obscure to us today? The Sumerians' reverence for Shamash, the sun god, underscores the disk's importance, but the precise nature of that importance remains tantalizingly out of reach. Comparisons with artifacts from other ancient cultures offer further food for thought. Circular, sun-like disks appear in Egypt, Anatolia, and the Indus Valley, often associated with solar deities or celestial observation. Could there have been a shared technological or symbolic tradition circulating across these early civilizations? And if so, what knowledge might have been exchanged, lost, or deliberately obscured? The sun disk may be a singular artifact of Sumer, yet it also hints at a broader web of ancient insight, one in which spirituality, astronomy, and engineering converge in ways that challenge our assumptions about the capabilities of early societies. Some fringe theories propose even bolder possibilities. A few researchers have suggested that certain features on the disks could correspond to energy generation, light manipulation, or other forms of technology that seem astonishingly advanced for a civilization rooted in mud brick and reed. While there is no concrete evidence to support such claims, the recurring question remains: why are these objects so carefully constructed, so geometrically precise, and so closely associated with celestial worship? Could these details simply reflect extraordinary artistry, or do they point to knowledge that we have yet to fully understand? In examining the Sumerian sun disk, we are confronted with a paradox: an artifact that is simultaneously simple and complex, spiritual and potentially technical, ancient yet timeless in its ability to provoke wonder. The more we study it, the more we recognize that the Sumerians may have encoded layers of knowledge deliberately, intended to be deciphered only by those who shared their worldview and mathematical understanding. And as we try to unravel these layers, the disks become more than objects. They are portals into a civilization's understanding of the world, the heavens, and the hidden forces that guided human life thousands of years ago. Standing before these disks today, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe. The delicate grooves, the radiant symmetry, the careful alignment, they speak of hands that labored with purpose, minds that observed with precision, and a culture that revered both knowledge and divinity. And yet, for all our modern tools, our telescopes, and our computational methods, the disks continue to guard their secrets. What exactly did the Sumerians know about the cosmos, and how did they encode that knowledge in objects so small yet so profound? Might there be other artifacts, buried and waiting, that complete the picture? Or perhaps reveal a level of understanding that even our most advanced science cannot yet grasp? The Sumerian sun. Disk remains a luminous enigma, bridging myth, technology, and the enduring human desire to understand the heavens. As we trace its patterns, its alignments, and its mysteries, we are reminded that the past is not always linear, and that knowledge can take forms that defy our expectations. Even millennia later, the disks invite us to look closer, to question, and to wonder. What secrets of ancient science and sacred wisdom are still waiting to be uncovered in the heart of Sumer? As we step back from the radiance of the Sumerian sun disk, with its intricate geometry and celestial implications, our attention turns to another layer of ancient mystery, one that intertwines myth, history, and the profound questions of human origin. The Anunnaki, often described in Sumerian texts as powerful deities or those who came from the heavens, occupy a central place in Sumerian cosmology. Their name, etched repeatedly across clay tablets and temple reliefs, evokes both reverence and awe, suggesting beings of immense authority who influenced the course of human affairs. Yet for all that is written about them, the true nature of the Anunnaki remains deeply elusive. The evidence begins with the texts themselves. The Sumerians, meticulous record keepers, left behind narratives that described the Anunnaki descending from the sky, assigning roles to humans, establishing cities, and determining the rhythms of agriculture, trade, and governance. These accounts are embedded within the mythological framework of creation, divine judgment, and cosmic order. In the Epic of Atrahasis, the Anunnaki are depicted as delegates of the gods, participants in the shaping of humanity, sometimes benevolent, sometimes indifferent, their motives inscrutable to mortals. But what exactly did the Sumerians mean by coming from the heavens? Were these metaphors for natural forces, representations of divine authority, or records of events that modern interpretations struggle to categorize? Archaeology provides partial illumination. Temples, ziggurats, and statues bear witness to the societal importance of the Anunnaki. These structures, often aligned with celestial points and constructed with extraordinary precision, suggest a civilization deeply attuned to both the heavens and the earth. Some researchers point to the sophistication of Sumerian engineering, the advanced knowledge of astronomy, and the meticulous record-keeping as indicators that the myths may have been inspired by real events or real agents, interpreted through a spiritual lens. Could the Anunnaki have been symbolic embodiments of natural and cosmic forces, or perhaps elite individuals whose knowledge seemed godlike to their contemporaries? The texts also describe the Anunnaki as administrators, judges, and even creators, figures who shaped the human workforce and influenced the development of agriculture and civilization itself. One particularly striking example is their role in the story of humanity's creation, where humans are fashioned to relieve the gods of labor, a narrative that echoes across multiple Sumerian tablets. The implications of such stories are profound. They suggest a civilization reflecting not only on its origins, but also on the concept of divine intervention in societal development. How much of this is mythological allegory, and how much might hint at a lost chapter of human history? Speculative theories have expanded the mystery further. Some fringe researchers propose that the Anunnaki were not merely mythological beings, but visitors from another world. Their knowledge of metallurgy, astronomy, and architecture encoded in the myths and artifacts they left behind. While there is no direct evidence for extraterrestrial involvement, the consistency and depth of Sumerian astronomical and engineering knowledge, combined with the enigmatic narratives of the Anunnaki, leave room for contemplation. How did a civilization so early in human history develop such precise calculations of celestial cycles, advanced irrigation systems, and urban planning? Were these accomplishments purely homegrown, or might they have been inspired, or even guided, by sources we do not yet understand? The physical remnants associated with the Anunnaki deepen the enigma. Reliefs and statues depict figures often larger than life, adorned with elaborate garments and headdresses, sometimes holding rods and rings whose purposes are still debated. Some symbols appear repeatedly across Sumerian artifacts, suggesting codified meanings or rituals that remain largely undeciphered. Could these motifs encode practical knowledge, spiritual doctrines, or perhaps instructions for technologies now lost to time? The sheer consistency of imagery across centuries implies a cultural and intellectual continuity, hinting at a deliberate preservation of knowledge whose full significance may still elude modern scholars. Even the linguistic record provides subtle puzzles. Names, titles, and descriptions of the Anunnaki vary across regions and epochs, yet common threads suggest a shared understanding of their authority and cosmic function. Some tablets describe them descending to the earth at specific locations, often near rivers or fertile lands, associating them with both creation and governance. Others depict them in councils, negotiating divine mandates or influencing mortal decisions. These accounts raise profound questions. Were the Sumerians recording allegorical tales, moral lessons, or observations of extraordinary individuals? And if there is a historical kernel to these narratives, what might it reveal about the origins of human civilization and the transmission of knowledge? Modern interpretations wrestle with these layers of meaning. Some scholars emphasize the theological and symbolic dimensions, viewing the Anunnaki as reflections of natural and social forces codified into myth. Others, intrigued by the precision of Sumerian science and the recurrent theme of beings from the sky, suggest the possibility of a more literal interpretation, though the evidence remains circumstantial. Yet, the fascination endures, not because we can definitively answer these questions, but because the Anunnaki straddle the boundaries of human understanding, between myth and history, spirituality and technology, observation and imagination. Standing before the ziggurats and artifacts that echo their presence, one is struck by the interplay of scale, complexity, and mystery. The Anunnaki are, in essence, both known and unknowable, figures whose narratives shaped early human thought, whose myths inspired awe and structure, and whose possible influence, whether symbolic or literal, lingers in the gaps of history. What truths remain buried beneath clay tablets, in the alignments of ancient cities, or hidden within symbols whose meanings we have yet to decipher? The mystery of the Anunnaki reminds us that history is not always linear, and knowledge is not always fully captured in the records that survive. For every tablet we decipher, every artifact we uncover, new questions emerge, and the veil of time continues to obscure as much as it reveals. Perhaps the Sumerians' most enduring legacy is not the answers they left behind, but the questions they embedded in the fabric of their civilization, questions that still call to us, across millennia, asking us to wonder, who were the Anunnaki, truly? And what knowledge did they possess that humanity has yet to grasp? Leaving the shadow of the Anunnaki behind, we turn our attention to objects far smaller in scale, yet equally profound in their capacity to reveal, or conceal, the mysteries of Sumerian civilization. The cylinder seals, tiny cylindrical stones, no larger than a thumb, intricately engraved with images of gods, humans, animals, and abstract symbols, rolled across soft clay. These seals left impressions that served as signatures, marks of authority, or perhaps something far more enigmatic. At first glance, they seem mundane, functional, almost utilitarian. But, upon closer inspection, the complexity of their design, the precision of their carving, and the variety of scenes they depict hint at knowledge and meaning that extend beyond simple administration. Discovered in tombs, temples, and storerooms across Mesopotamia, the seals are often made from rare stones, lapis lazuli, carnelian, hematite, materials that had to be imported from distant lands. Each seal is a miniature canvas carved with remarkable skill, where every figure, symbol, and pattern is intentional. Some depict scenes of daily life, while others portray interactions between deities and humans, mysterious rituals, or what appear to be symbolic representations of power, law, and cosmology. The question arises, did the Sumerians encode practical information within these images, or were they purely symbolic expressions of status and belief? Scholars agree that the seals functioned as a kind of signature or administrative tool. They authenticated documents, marked ownership of goods, and recorded contracts. Yet, the artistry and thematic complexity suggest a purpose that exceeds bureaucracy. Certain seals contain sequences and patterns that are difficult to interpret, clusters of figures engaged in activities that have no direct modern analog, or symbols repeated with a precision that hints at coding or structured communication. Could the seals represent an early form of symbolic logic, a proto-writing system layered with meaning beyond the obvious? And if so, what knowledge or authority did they convey to those trained to read them? Some of the most intriguing cylinder seals depict extraordinary scenes, figures standing alongside what appear to be winged beings, celestial symbols hovering above the horizon, or human-like forms interacting with geometric devices. Mainstream archaeology often interprets these images as mythological or allegorical, illustrating Sumerian cosmology and ritual. But the consistency of certain motifs, particularly those associated with solar, lunar, and planetary imagery, raises compelling questions. Were these depictions purely symbolic, or did they encode knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, or technology? Could the Sumerians have been using their seals as a method of storing and transmitting information in a tangible, portable form? The physical characteristics of the seals themselves add another layer of mystery. Carved with such precision that some scholars describe them as microscopic masterpieces, the depth and uniformity of the engravings suggest tools and techniques of surprising sophistication. Some seals are cylindrical, while others are slightly conical or barrel-shaped, each variant leaving subtly different impressions when rolled across clay. Could these differences be intentional, encoding information through rotation, alignment, or layering? Might certain seals have been designed to convey multiple meanings depending on the angle or sequence in which they were applied? The possibilities are tantalizing. Equally compelling is the widespread presence of these seals across the region and the consistency of iconography over centuries. From the earliest Sumerian city-states to later Babylonian and Assyrian contexts, the motifs recur. Winged disk symbols, gods in procession, sacred animals, and abstract geometric patterns. This continuity suggests more than artistic convention. It hints at a tradition of knowledge preservation, what was considered important enough to transmit in miniature form across generations and geographic boundaries, and why did the Sumerians go to such lengths to encode it in stone? Some researchers speculate that the seals may have functioned as mnemonic devices, tools for remembering ritual procedures, astronomical observations, or mythological narratives. Others suggest the possibility of a hidden layer of communication, a secret system accessible only to the literate, priestly, or elite classes. And still others note the striking resemblance between certain Sumerian seals and symbolic representations in distant cultures, raising questions about the transmission of knowledge across civilizations in the ancient world. Could these small objects hold clues to a broader understanding of early human civilization, one in which art, administration, and science were inseparably intertwined? There are even more speculative theories. Some fringe interpretations propose that the seals depict interactions with otherworldly beings or technologies, suggesting that the Sumerians had access to knowledge or experiences now lost. While these ideas are controversial and lack definitive evidence, the seals themselves, tiny, precise, and mysterious, invite such contemplation. They are tangible remnants of a civilization that was extraordinarily observant, deliberate, and symbolically sophisticated, yet whose full understanding remains tantalizingly out of reach. Examining these seals, one cannot help but be struck by the human ingenuity required to produce them. The artisans who carved them combined artistic skill with intellectual precision, encoding narrative, law, and possibly science into objects no larger than a finger. And yet, despite millennia of study, the full extent of their purpose remains elusive. Each seal is a window into a world of ritual, commerce, mythology, and knowledge. A civilization simultaneously familiar and profoundly alien to us today. The mystery of the Sumerian cylinder seals lies not only in what they depict, but in what may be hidden between the lines, the the spaces and the impressions. What knowledge did the Sumerians encode in these miniature cylinders, and how much of it has been lost to time? Were they simple administrative tools, complex mnemonic devices, or perhaps repositories of wisdom that we are only beginning to glimpse? And if so, what else might lie hidden among the thousands of surviving seals, waiting for careful study, insight, and perhaps a new lens through which to see them? As we trace the tiny impressions of gods, humans, and symbols across soft clay, we are reminded that history is often preserved in the smallest of objects. The cylinder seals are enduring proof of a civilization that thought deeply, observed keenly, and recorded its world with deliberate intention. Yet their full story remains untold, and in that silence, in the intricate lines that have survived millennia, lies a quiet, persistent invitation to look closer, to question, and to wonder what other secrets the Sumerians may have left behind, etched in stone and waiting patiently for discovery. As we set aside the tiny yet intricate Sumerian cylinder seals with their encoded narratives and enigmatic depictions of gods and humans, our gaze now shifts to a symbol both familiar and mysterious, the Sumerian Tree of Life. Unlike the small portable seals, this motif often towers in reliefs, carvings, and temple art, rendered with deliberate symmetry and striking detail. Its trunk rises from a structured base, branches out into perfect patterns, and bears stylized leaves or fruits, sometimes flanked by figures of gods, worshippers, or mythical creatures. The images are simultaneously natural and otherworldly, evoking life and growth, yet also order, knowledge, and cosmic structure. The Tree of Life appears across many Sumerian artifacts, from temple walls in Ur and Nippur to cylinder seals and ceremonial plaques. Scholars generally interpret it as a symbol of fertility, abundance, or divine order, connecting heaven and earth in a visual metaphor for life's continuity. Yet the precision with which it is depicted, the consistent recurrence of its form across centuries and city-states, and its frequent association with deities such as Inanna and Enki suggest a deeper significance, one that may have encompassed spiritual, social, and perhaps even scientific meaning. What knowledge or concepts were the Sumerians encoding in these elegant carvings, and why did the motif endure so persistently across their culture? Some of the most compelling representations show the tree flanked by guardian figures, humanoid forms with bird-like or serpentine features, sometimes holding ritual vessels. These figures appear to interact with the tree itself, touching, supporting, or even extracting from it in ways that hint at ritual or cosmic symbolism. Could this reflect an understanding of nature, cycles, or energy, knowledge encoded metaphorically, as a combination of religion, philosophy, and observation of the natural world? Or were these purely allegorical, intended to convey moral, spiritual, or societal truths? The answer remains tantalizingly unclear. The Tree of Life often appears alongside other enigmatic symbols, the rod and ring, celestial discs, and geometric patterns that echo motifs found on cylinder seals and temple reliefs. This repetition suggests a complex visual language, one designed to communicate layers of meaning. Some researchers propose that these images may encode practical knowledge about agriculture, astronomy, or medicine, translating observation into metaphor. Could the Tree of Life have been a mnemonic device, a symbolic diagram for understanding natural cycles, seasonal changes, or even human physiology? The notion is speculative, yet it invites us to look more closely at the careful alignment, symmetry, and consistent structure in each depiction. The physical placement of Tree of Life motifs within temples and sacred spaces adds further intrigue. Reliefs often situate the tree at the center of ceremonial halls or atop altars, implying both spiritual and functional importance. Could priests have used these representations as teaching tools, guiding rituals, or perhaps even as calendars or reference points for celestial events? If so, the symbol's spiritual significance and practical function may have been inseparable, merging observation, philosophy, and ritual in a way that challenges modern distinctions between science and religion. Some of the more unusual Tree of Life images include paired trees or sequences of multiple trees, each flanked by figures holding vessels, birds, or animals. These complex arrangements suggest codified systems, perhaps representing stages of life, divine hierarchy, or principles of cosmic balance. Could the Sumerians have been encoding cosmological knowledge, agricultural cycles, or philosophical concepts in these patterns, ensuring that understanding passed from one generation to the next? And if so, how much of this encoded knowledge has been lost or misinterpreted over millennia? The motif also resonates beyond Sumer. Similar Tree of Life symbols appear in later Babylonian, Assyrian, and even distant cultural traditions, hinting at the endurance of certain archetypal concepts. Were these shared motifs purely symbolic, or did they carry practical or spiritual knowledge across cultures? Could the Sumerian version represent an origin point for these ideas, a carefully constructed visual language that linked the sacred with the observable universe, human society, and the natural world? Speculative interpretations, often controversial, suggest that some depictions may even represent connections to advanced knowledge, perhaps illustrating principles of energy, cosmology, or technologies that remain obscure. While evidence for such claims is inconclusive, the consistency and sophistication of the imagery demand attention. Why did the Sumerians invest so much effort into rendering this symbol repeatedly, with such precision and care? What knowledge, spiritual or practical, was considered important enough to encode in stone and clay, repeated across centuries and city-states? Even the simplest Tree of Life carvings reveal the care and intention of their creators. The symmetry, proportions, and spacing of branches, leaves, and figures suggest that these were not casual artistic choices, but deliberate representations with layered meaning. And yet, for all the attention paid to their creation, the full scope of their purpose remains elusive. Were they guides to spiritual enlightenment, maps of cosmic order, practical diagrams for understanding nature, or perhaps all of these at once? The mystery of the Sumerian Tree of Life invites reflection. It is both a symbol and a question, a reminder that early civilizations encoded knowledge in forms that were as much visual and symbolic as textual. In tracing the trunk, following the branches, and examining the figures that interact with it, we glimpse a worldview that combined observation, spirituality, and philosophy in ways that are still difficult to fully comprehend. And so we are left to wonder, what truths about the cosmos, about life, and about the Sumerians' understanding of their world remain hidden within the enduring image of the Tree of Life? Could these symbols preserve knowledge lost to time, waiting to be deciphered, or are they deliberately mysterious, meant to inspire contemplation and reflection? As we continue our journey through the enigmas of ancient Sumer, the Tree of Life stands as a quiet, persistent reminder that history, like the branches of this symbolic tree, stretches in many directions, some known, some hidden, and some that may never be fully revealed. From the symbolic branches of the Sumerian Tree of Life, our journey now leads us to a place where myth, ritual, and architecture converge in monumental form, the city of Nippur. Situated on the banks of the ancient Euphrates, Nippur was not the largest city of Sumer, yet it held an authority that surpassed its size. Here stood a religious complex that dominated the spiritual life of the region, a sprawling network of temples, altars, and administrative buildings dedicated to Enlil, the god of wind, earth, and divine authority. Even today, amid the arid plains and eroded ruins, one can sense the power and devotion that once radiated from this sacred city. Excavations revealed towering ziggurats, constructed in precise layers of mud brick, their summits reaching toward the sky as if to bridge earth and heaven. Each brick bears witness to careful planning and remarkable engineering skill, a testament to the Sumerians' knowledge of construction, geometry, and the symbolic resonance of space. Within the temples, altars, and inner sanctums, archaeologists have uncovered ceremonial objects, inscribed tablets, and offerings that speak of intricate rituals, astronomical observation, and a sophisticated understanding of the divine order. Yet, for all that we know, Nippur remains a puzzle. Why did this city, relatively modest in size, become the religious heart of Sumer, a place where kings and priests alike sought legitimacy and guidance? Central to the mystery is the city's spatial organization. The ziggurats, temples, and courtyards appear carefully aligned, not only with each other but, in some cases, with celestial markers. Archaeologists have noted orientations that correspond to the rising sun during solstices, the moon's cycles, and even the movement of prominent planets. Were these alignments purely symbolic, meant to honor the gods, or did they serve practical purposes, guiding ritual calendars, agricultural planning, or celestial observation? The possibility that Nippur was a center for early astronomy cannot be dismissed, yet its precise functions remain shrouded in uncertainty. Within the religious complex, inscriptions frequently mention Enlil, the chief deity, as well as the assembly of gods who governed human fate. Tablets describe offerings, festivals, and divinations, some of which appear to record celestial events or seasonal cycles. The meticulous nature of these records is striking. Even minor deviations in rituals or timings were carefully noted. Could it be that the priests of Nippur held knowledge of astronomical patterns, hydraulic engineering, and social governance, all encoded within religious practice? Or were these tablets intended primarily as spiritual directives, their practical applications an incidental byproduct of devotion? Among the artifacts discovered are ceremonial vessels, statuary, and carved reliefs featuring symbols that remain difficult to interpret. Some depict trees, rivers, and mythical creatures intertwined with divine figures, echoing motifs like the Tree of Life and the sun disk. Could these symbols have served as a coded language, a method for preserving knowledge across generations in a form accessible only to the initiated? If so, what insights might these artifacts hold about Sumerian cosmology, ritual practice, or technological understanding? Nippur's enduring significance also lies in its political and cultural role. Kings from across Sumer journeyed here to seek divine approval, reinforcing their legitimacy through ritual and inscription. Yet the city's influence seems to transcend mere human politics. Its temples and ziggurats are imbued with a sense of sacred geometry, as though the very layout of the city was intended to mirror cosmic order. Was Nippur conceived as a microcosm of the universe, a space where heaven and earth intersected in tangible form? And if so, what principles guided its construction, and how much of that knowledge has been lost to time? Excavations reveal layers of reconstruction, suggesting that Nippur's sacred spaces were maintained, rebuilt, and reimagined over centuries. Each generation left its mark, preserving ritual practices while adapting to environmental changes, shifts in political power, and evolving spiritual beliefs. Could the consistency of certain motifs, orientations, and rituals point to knowledge deliberately preserved, transmitted across centuries through both architecture and ceremony? Or is the apparent continuity simply the product of tradition and cultural memory, rather than encoded scientific or spiritual insight? Even the city's decline adds to its mystery. Over time, Nippur lost prominence, yet it never vanished entirely. Its temples and ziggurats, though abandoned and weathered, remained revered in myth and memory, cited in texts long after their political and economic power had faded. Why did this city, more than others, retain such enduring spiritual significance? Was it the sacred geography, the presence of relics, or something more intangible, a resonance with cosmic or divine principles that early humans instinctively recognized? Standing among the ruins today, one can still trace the pathways, gaze along the alignments, and imagine the processions of priests, the chants, and the rituals that once filled the city. Nippur embodies the intersection of human devotion, architectural genius, and a civilization's understanding of its place in the cosmos. Yet, despite decades of study, the full scope of its significance eludes us. What was known within its walls, in its temples and ziggurats, that we have yet to fully decode? Could there be knowledge of celestial cycles, sacred geometry, or ritualized technology hidden in the ruins, waiting for careful observation and insight? The city of Nippur stands as a testament to Sumerian ingenuity, devotion, and mystery. Its stones, inscriptions, and spatial alignments whisper across millennia, inviting us to consider not just what was recorded, but what remains concealed. And in that silence, in the shadow of temples and the ruins of ziggurats, lies a persistent, compelling question. What truths about the heavens, the earth, and the human spirit might still be hidden within this sacred city, awaiting discovery? As we leave the sacred precincts of Nippur behind, with its towering ziggurats and carefully aligned temples, our attention turns to a record that has both fascinated and perplexed historians for over a century: the Sumerian king list. Unlike the ruins of Nippur, which speak through stone and artifact, this text speaks directly from clay tablets, its cuneiform markings offering a linear account of rulers stretching back into an almost mythic past. Yet the king list is not a simple chronicle. It is an enigma, a blend of history, myth, and extraordinary claims that challenge our understanding of time, power, and civilization itself. The Sumerian king list survives in multiple copies, scattered across Mesopotamian sites such as Nippur, Ur, and Larsa. Each tablet lists kings, their cities, and astonishingly long reigns, some lasting tens of thousands of years. The earlier entries, often associated with cities like Eridu and Bad Tibira, describe rulers whose lifespans verge on the immortal. Scholars generally interpret these extraordinary figures as mythological, symbolic, or literary devices. Yet the repetition of names and sequences across independent tablets suggests a deliberate attempt to preserve memory, to link human history with divine or cosmic order. Could these extraordinary reigns carry hidden meaning, encoded in numbers and sequences we are only beginning to appreciate? The king list also reveals a striking pattern. It is divided into periods before the flood and after the flood, suggesting that the Sumerians framed history within both natural and supernatural events. The flood itself, described with echoes in later Mesopotamian and even biblical texts, presents a tantalizing intersection between myth and archaeology. Could the king list preserve memories of real events, catastrophes, or societal upheavals, woven into a narrative designed to convey moral, religious, or cosmic order? And if so, what truths lie buried beneath the exaggerations and symbolic lifespans? One of the most puzzling aspects is the consistency of city succession. Kingship appears to transfer from one city to another: Eridu to Bad Tibira, then Larsa, Sippar, and Shuruppak. The text implies that divine authority, or perhaps a mandate from the gods, moved geographically as well as temporally. Archaeological evidence confirms the prominence of these cities, yet the king list itself suggests a conceptual continuity that is almost abstract, a map of power as much as a record of rulers. Was this intended to document political history, spiritual legitimacy, or a combination of both? The numerical claims on the king list are equally confounding. Some reigns are recorded in units of sars and nirs, Sumerian measures that multiply human lifespans far beyond what we would consider plausible. Modern interpretations often reduce these numbers to symbolic or mythic terms, suggesting that the Sumerians may have been encoding astronomical cycles, calendrical systems, or abstract concepts in the form of exaggerated lifespans. Could these numbers represent something more than hyperbole, a hidden method of tracking time, celestial movements, or even societal cycles? The king list also raises questions about the intersection of history and mythology. Figures like Alulim, the first king of Eridu, appear alongside names corroborated by archaeological evidence, such as rulers of Ur and Uruk. This blending of legend and fact challenges historians. Where does myth end and history begin? Are the early entries purely allegorical, or might they preserve fragments of memory from a civilization that existed before written records were commonplace? Could the extraordinary lengths of reigns be metaphors for influence, wisdom, or spiritual authority, rather than literal years? Some researchers have proposed that the king list encodes lost knowledge, perhaps reflecting a sophisticated understanding of time and history that modern scholars have yet to decipher. The careful ordering of kings, cities, and dynastic successions suggests intentionality, an attempt to preserve continuity, legitimacy, and cosmic order. Was this a tool of political power, a record of divine sanction, or a method of encoding ancestral wisdom for generations? And if knowledge was deliberately embedded in these sequences, how much of it remains hidden beneath the symbolic numbers and mythic narratives? Even more speculative theories have emerged. Certain fringe interpretations suggest that the king list might reference interactions between humans and otherworldly beings, linking back to legends of the Anunnaki. While these ideas remain controversial and largely unverified, the combination of extraordinary lifespans, divine mandates, and city-to-city succession continues to invite contemplation. What prompted the Sumerians to craft such a document? Was it simply the work of scribes attempting to reconcile myth with history? Or might it preserve echoes of knowledge far older than the civilization itself? The physical form of the tablets adds another layer of intrigue. Each copy is painstakingly inscribed, often by skilled scribes working with styluses on soft clay variations. Between tablets suggest updates, corrections, or regional interpretations, indicating that the king list was not static, but evolving. This evolution mirrors the civilization itself, a culture deeply aware of time, memory, and authority. Could these differences hint at regional perspectives, lost records, or deliberate obfuscation? And what might have been intentionally preserved or concealed for those who would read these tablets centuries later? As we study the king list today, one cannot help but feel a sense of reverence for the Sumerians' ambition and their view of time itself. This is a civilization attempting to place itself within the vast expanse of human and cosmic history, mapping kings, cities, and events across millennia in a way that is both practical and profoundly symbolic. Yet the king list remains an enigma, a document that invites interpretation, speculation, and wonder without providing definitive answers. Ultimately, the Sumerian king list challenges our assumptions about history, myth, and memory. It is both a record and a riddle, a linear document that points toward something far more complex than mere chronology. Was it a ledger of past events, a spiritual guide, or a code waiting to be understood? Perhaps it is all of these, layered in meaning and obscured by time. And as we contemplate its lists of kings, cities, and impossible lifespans, we are left with a quiet, persistent question. What truths about human civilization, divine authority, and the passage of time might still be hidden within these ancient clay tablets, waiting to be discovered? From the records of kings and their extraordinary reigns, our journey now turns to a different kind of testimony, one written not in clay, but in the very earth itself, the monumental ziggurats of ancient Sumer. These towering structures, rising layer upon layer of mud brick, dominate the archaeological landscape of cities like Ur, Uruk, and Nippur. Even in ruin, they exude an aura of purpose and precision, a reminder that the Sumerians were not merely builders, but careful planners, architects of space, structure, and, perhaps, cosmic order. Standing at the base of a ziggurat, one is immediately struck by its scale, the steep terraces climbing skyward, and the meticulous alignment of stairways, platforms, and ceremonial spaces. Yet beyond their physical grandeur lies a deeper mystery, the question of why these ziggurats were oriented with such striking precision. Archaeologists have long noted that many ziggurats are aligned along cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, with deviations so minimal that they suggest careful observation and calculation rather than coincidence. In some cases, these structures appear oriented toward specific celestial events, such as the solstices, equinoxes, or the rising and setting of prominent stars. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, for example, exhibits alignments that some scholars argue correspond to the rising of certain constellations, potentially linking the temple to both ritual and astronomical observation. But why did the Sumerians choose these orientations, and what knowledge guided their design? Mainstream archaeology often interprets these alignments as symbolic, connecting temples with the heavens to reinforce the authority of the gods or the legitimacy of rulers. Ziggurats were, after all, the center of civic and religious life, places where priests mediated between earth and sky, human and divine. Yet, the precision observed in these alignments goes beyond simple symbolism. Could the Sumerians have used the ziggurats as observational platforms, integrating architecture with celestial mechanics to track time, seasons, or planetary cycles? And, if so, what methods might they have employed to achieve such accuracy without the tools we consider necessary today? Some researchers point to patterns that are even more enigmatic. In certain city layouts, multiple ziggurats and temples appear positioned relative to one another in ways that correspond to geometric or astronomical relationships. Could these alignments reflect a deliberate mapping of the cosmos onto the Earth, an urban expression of celestial order? The Sumerians may have embedded knowledge of the heavens within the very design of their cities, a practice that merges spiritual devotion with practical observation. Yet the full reasoning behind these placements remains elusive. The precision of ziggurat alignment is particularly striking when one considers the era in which they were built, long before the advent of modern surveying tools or telescopes. The Sumerians achieved levels of consistency that rival later civilizations. Some scholars suggest that they relied on simple but effective techniques, observing shadows, tracking the sun's movement, or using water and sight lines to establish cardinal directions. Yet even allowing for these methods, the consistency and accuracy of multiple ziggurats across separate city-states suggest knowledge that was deliberate, transmitted, and carefully preserved over generations. Could there be principles of astronomy, geometry, or surveying embedded in Sumerian tradition that we have yet to fully comprehend? Further intrigue arises when considering the ziggurat's relationship to ritual and power. Each structure was not merely a platform for worship, but a vertical journey, a series of ascending terraces that symbolically brought the priest or king closer to the divine. The orientation of these steps, stairways, and terraces may have reinforced cosmological beliefs, guiding processions and ceremonies along a path aligned with the stars. Could the very architecture of the Ziggurat have functioned as a teaching tool, a means of encoding cosmic order into ritual practice? And if so, how much knowledge was understood only by the initiated, hidden from ordinary observation? Speculative theories extend the mystery even further. Some researchers suggest that certain ziggurats may align with phenomena that modern science has only recently begun to map, such as the precession of the equinoxes or the heliacal rising of bright stars. Others propose that the cumulative alignment of multiple ziggurats across Sumerian cities could reflect an intentional plan, a network of sacred observatories, each acting in concert with others to monitor the heavens. While evidence for these ideas remains debated, the possibility that Sumerians embedded a sophisticated understanding of astronomy into their architecture is tantalizing. Even the choice of site itself adds to the enigma. Ziggurats were rarely built on arbitrary ground. Their placement often corresponds to elevated terrain, river proximity, or pre-existing sacred sites. Could these choices have been purely practical, for drainage, visibility, or defense? Or might they reflect deeper considerations, integrating geography with cosmology, ensuring that each temple's orientation resonated with both earth and sky? The interplay between location, alignment, and ritual purpose suggests a worldview in which architecture, environment, and the cosmos were inseparably linked. Standing amidst the ruins today, one can trace the lines of stairways, measure the slope of terraces, and imagine the sun rising along the carefully planned axes. The experience evokes not only admiration for Sumerian engineering, but also awe at their conceptual understanding of the world. Ziggurats were more than monuments. They were instruments, embodiments of knowledge, and bridges between the human and the divine. Yet, despite centuries of study, their full purpose and the depth of their astronomical insight remain shrouded in mystery. The Sumerian ziggurats, aligned with precision, echo with questions that continue to challenge modern scholars. What motivated the choice of orientation and site? How much astronomical and geometric knowledge was encoded within these structures? And could there be aspects of Sumerian observation and understanding that have been lost to time, hidden within the earth and mud brick of temples that have withstood millennia? In their silent, sun-baked remnants, the ziggurats of Sumer stand as enduring monuments to human ingenuity, devotion, and curiosity. And as we gaze upward at their terraces and platforms, tracing the lines once aligned with sun, star, and season, we are reminded that the past still holds secrets, waiting for us to discover not just the structures themselves, but the knowledge, purpose, and vision that shaped them. From the sacred avenues and terraces of Nippur, we move now to one of Sumer's most enigmatic and captivating sites, the Temple of Inanna. Nestled in the heart of Uruk, one of the earliest and most influential cities of Sumer, this temple stands as a testament not only to architectural skill, but to the enduring power of devotion. Even in its ruined state, the structure exudes presence, rising from the earth in stepped platforms of baked mud brick, flanked by ceremonial courtyards, and once adorned with intricate reliefs and statuary. The temple's layout, proportions, and orientation suggest more than human artistry. They hint at an intimate understanding of ritual, astronomy, and the symbolic weaving of space and power. Inanna, goddess of love, fertility, and war, was one of the most revered deities in Sumerian religion. Her temple was not merely a place for worship. It was a living center of civic and spiritual life, where priests performed complex rituals, made offerings, and maintained records of both sacred and mundane affairs. Excavations reveal altars, inscriptions, votive offerings, and ceremonial vessels, each telling a story of devotion, hierarchy, and intricate ritual practice. But beyond these objects lies an enduring question. What deeper knowledge or symbolism might have been encoded in the architecture, layout, and artifacts of the temple? The physical design of the Temple of Inanna is striking in its symmetry and alignment. Archaeologists have noted that the central sanctuary and its accompanying structures are oriented with a precision that mirrors celestial patterns. Certain walls and corridors appear aligned with the rising and setting of the sun, perhaps marking solstices or other significant astronomical events. Was this intentional, a method of linking human ritual with cosmic rhythms, or merely a symbolic gesture? If Sumerian priests were tracking celestial cycles through architecture, what knowledge might have been preserved in these alignments? Knowledge of time, seasons, or the movements of heavenly bodies? Within the temple precincts, reliefs and carvings provide another layer of mystery. Scenes depict Inanna flanked by lions, birds, or human attendants, engaging in rituals whose full significance remains obscure. Some images echo motifs found in cylinder seals and other Sumerian art, suggesting an interconnected visual language used to encode myths, spiritual principles, or perhaps practical knowledge. Could these depictions be mnemonic devices, a way to transmit complex ceremonial or cosmic information across generations? Were the priests reading these symbols as instruction manuals for ritual, observation, or even governance? Excavated artifacts hint at the temple's multifaceted role in society. Tablets describe offerings, festivals, and divine decrees, often linking the goddess's favor to the legitimacy of kings and the prosperity of the city. Inanna's temple was thus not only a religious center, but a hub of political power, intertwining the sacred with the practical, the cosmic with the civic. Yet the extraordinary precision of the temple's design and the consistency of symbolic motifs suggest something more. A deliberate encoding of knowledge intended to survive beyond the immediate ritual context. Could the temple itself have functioned as a kind of observatory, library, or teaching space, integrating spirituality, astronomy, and societal governance? Some of the more enigmatic features of the temple are subtle relief patterns. Alignments of doorways and the spacing of altars suggest an awareness of geometry, proportion, and spatial resonance. Were these design elements purely aesthetic, or did they reflect principles of sacred architecture, intended to harmonize human activity with cosmic forces? Certain scholars have even proposed that the temple's layout may encode astronomical cycles, celestial observations, or seasonal patterns, its physical form serving as a tool for both worship and knowledge preservation. Inanna's temple also evokes questions about ritual practice. Processions, offerings, and ceremonies were likely performed along carefully planned pathways, connecting courtyards, terraces, and sanctuaries. Could the very act of moving through the temple have been a form of instruction or alignment with celestial events? Was the architecture meant to guide the participants' understanding of the divine, embedding knowledge in both experience and space? The interplay of movement, observation, and ritual suggests a sophistication that blends spiritual devotion with systematic observation. Speculative interpretations further deepen the intrigue. Some suggest that recurring motifs, lions, celestial symbols, and geometric patterns may have encoded esoteric knowledge accessible only to the initiated. Others argue that certain architectural features, such as elevated platforms or orientation of stairways, may have been used to observe the heavens or mark time with remarkable precision. While these theories remain contested, the extraordinary consistency, scale, and design of the Temple of Inanna continue to captivate researchers and enthusiasts alike. Even as the temple has weathered millennia, it exerts an enduring presence. Standing among the ruins today, one can imagine the processions of priests, the flickering of torches along stairways, the recitation of hymns and rituals timed to the sun or stars. The Temple of Inanna is more than stone and brick. It is a living testament to a civilization that sought to integrate spirituality, knowledge, and cosmic order into tangible form. Yet its full meaning, its encoded knowledge, and the intentions of its builders remain elusive. The mystery of the Temple of Inanna lies not only in its physical remnants, but in the questions it continues to pose. What truths about Sumerian cosmology, ritual, and the blending of spiritual and practical knowledge remain hidden in its stones and alignments? Could the temple preserve insights into astronomy, sacred geometry, or societal organization that we have yet to uncover? And if so, what other secrets of the cosmos and human ingenuity might still be waiting, silently preserved within this sacred place for those who look closely enough? From the sacred precincts of Inanna's temple in Uruk, our journey now turns to an artifact that embodies the intersection of devotion, power, and artistic mastery. The statues of Gudea, found primarily in the city of Lagash. These sculpted figures present the Sumerian ruler in serene, contemplative poses, often seated or standing with hands folded in prayer. Carved from diorite, a dense and unusually hard stone, the statues are remarkable not only for their craftsmanship, but for the deliberate choice of material, one that would have required extraordinary effort to quarry, transport, and carve. Even centuries later, the precision and smoothness of the statues suggest an advanced understanding of stonework, yet their significance extends far beyond mere artistry. Gudea, who ruled Lagash around 2144 to 2124 BCE, is portrayed as pious and devoted, a servant of the gods who brings prosperity to his city through divine favor. Inscriptions carved into many of these statues recount his building projects, temple dedications, and acts of devotion. Each statue thus serves a dual purpose. It is both a monument to a ruler and a record of sacred acts, a permanent testament to the bond between the human and the divine. Yet as we examine these figures more closely, a lingering question emerges. What deeper knowledge or intention might have been embedded in their creation? The statues of Gudea are notable for their intricate details and symbolic elements. Some depict him holding a water vessel from which streams flow, representing the provision of life and prosperity to his people. Others show inscriptions on his robe, detailing the construction of temples or invoking divine guidance. Scholars generally interpret these features as expressions of piety and political authority, yet the deliberate choice of proportions, posture, and iconography hints at a more profound significance. Could these statues have served as teaching tools, mnemonic devices, or even symbolic maps of ritual, cosmology, or city planning? The materiality of the statues adds to their mystery. Diorite is extraordinarily difficult to carve, yet the Gudea statues are meticulously smooth, their proportions carefully rendered, and inscriptions sharply incised. Why would the Sumerians invest so much labor and expertise in creating these figures? Was it purely to honor a ruler? Or did the act of working with such a challenging medium have ritual significance, reinforcing the sacred connection between human effort and divine will? And could the choice of stone also have had symbolic meaning, conveying strength, permanence, or cosmic order? Another intriguing aspect is the posture and expression of Gudea in these statues. Unlike the dynamic, often aggressive depictions of rulers in other cultures, Gudea is calm, meditative, and focused. His hands are often clasped, his gaze contemplative, projecting an image of spiritual authority rather than brute power. Does this suggest that Sumerian rulership was conceived less in terms of conquest and more as stewardship under divine guidance? Could the serenity of these figures reflect a deeper philosophy, linking human governance, ritual practice, and cosmic balance? Some researchers have suggested that the inscriptions and iconography of the Gudea statues encode knowledge beyond what we normally associate with historical records. Tablets indicate that Gudea oversaw not only religious constructions, but also engineering projects involving canals, water management, and city planning. Could the statues themselves, in their symbolism and inscriptions, serve as a visual record of such technological and architectural knowledge, preserved in stone for posterity? And if so, how much of this knowledge was intended for the initiated priesthood versus the broader public? The placement of these statues within temples also invites speculation. Many were found in sanctuaries or shrines, positioned as intermediaries between worshippers and the divine. Could their presence have been intended to channel spiritual energy, guide rituals, or reinforce cosmic order? The idea that a ruler could exist simultaneously as a political leader and a sacred conduit is central to Sumerian thought. Yet the precision and consistency of the Gudea statues suggest a deliberate encoding of ritual and knowledge that goes beyond simple representation. Even more mysterious is the consistency of their design across multiple statues. Despite differences in scale, material, or specific inscriptions, the overall proportions, posture, and serene demeanor of Gudea remain remarkably uniform. Was there a prescribed canonical form, a visual language that communicated rulership, piety, and cosmic alignment? Could these statues reflect an understanding of symbolism, geometry, and even astronomical cycles that modern observers have yet to decode? The statues also prompt questions about the interplay of memory and legacy. Gudea appears in multiple forms, inscribed with accounts of temple construction, divine decrees, and acts of governance. They were created to endure, to preserve both his image and his deeds for generations. Yet what else might have been intentionally encoded within them? Knowledge of ritual timing, sacred geometry, or even cosmological principles. Could these statues serve as keys to understanding a sophisticated worldview in which art, religion, and administration were inseparable? Standing before a Gudea statue today, one is struck by its quiet authority. The figure seems almost alive in its stillness, its calm gaze and folded hands suggesting both human contemplation and divine connection. The labor, intention, and knowledge embedded in these sculptures transcend the centuries, leaving us with questions as profound as the inscriptions themselves. How much of Sumerian wisdom, scientific understanding, and spiritual insight has been preserved, waiting to be interpreted? And what truths about the interwoven realms of human governance, devotion, and cosmic order might still be hidden within these enduring stone figures? The statue of Gudea endures as a silent yet compelling enigma. Its very existence invites reflection, urging us to consider that in the hands of the Sumerians, art was not merely decorative, kingship was not merely political, and devotion was not merely ritual. It was all intertwined in a vision of life, society, and the cosmos that challenges our understanding to this day. From the silent authority of Gudea's statues, our exploration now leads us to a collection of artifacts that whisper secrets across millennia. The Shuruppak tablets. Unearthed in the ancient city of Shuruppak, located along the fertile banks of the Euphrates, these clay tablets offer a glimpse into the administrative, spiritual, and intellectual life of one of Sumer's earliest settlements. Yet among their practical records lies something more. A layer of knowledge that, even today, seems almost forbidden, tantalizing scholars and enthusiasts alike. Their well-preserved cuneiform inscriptions hint at wisdom that reaches beyond everyday record-keeping, hinting at the blurred boundaries between the mundane, the mystical, and the profoundly mysterious. Shuruppak itself was a city of immense historical significance. Long before the rise of Ur or Lagash, it was a thriving center of commerce, governance, and ritual. Archaeological excavations have revealed residential compounds, temples, and storerooms, but the clay tablets are its most enduring legacy. Many of these tablets record mundane matters, grain allocations, trade transactions, and administrative correspondence. Yet, interspersed among these seemingly ordinary records are texts that describe divine instructions, enigmatic lists, and cryptic warnings. Could these inscriptions have preserved knowledge that was deliberately concealed, accessible only to those trained to read its symbolic and coded language? One of the most remarkable aspects of the Shuruppak tablets is their attention to order, sequence, and detail. Some scholars note that the numerical records, calendrical references, and structured lists suggest a sophisticated understanding of mathematics, measurement, and even astronomical cycles. Were the Sumerians of Shuruppak merely maintaining efficient records, or were they encoding a more profound understanding of the cosmos and natural law in a form that would survive the ages? If these tablets were indeed repositories of forbidden or esoteric knowledge, what principles might have been preserved for the initiated, and why were they hidden among seemingly mundane transactions? Several tablets describe interactions between humans and divine or semi-divine figures, echoing themes found throughout Sumerian myth. These passages recount instructions from gods, moral admonitions, and, intriguingly, descriptions of phenomena that resist easy interpretation. Could these writings have been early attempts to preserve knowledge of natural cycles, celestial events, or technologies that the Sumerians considered too powerful or dangerous for general dissemination? And if so, why were such insights encoded in this particular city, in a medium intended to endure through the centuries? The idea of forbidden knowledge emerges not only from content, but from context. Shuruppak, according to later texts, was one of the cities affected by the Great Flood, a cataclysmic event that, according to legend, erased much of humanity's early knowledge. Could the tablets represent remnants of pre-flood wisdom, preserved carefully by scribes who understood its importance and sought to shield it from destruction? If this is the case, then each tablet is not merely a record of daily life, but a vessel of ideas deliberately safeguarded against the erosion of time. The physicality of the tablets adds to their enigma. Each piece of clay was inscribed with precision, often while still soft, then baked to endure for millennia. The act of writing itself may have been ritualized, a deliberate process in which knowledge, memory, and intention were encoded into the clay. Could it be that the very act of creating these tablets, forming, inscribing, and preserving them, was considered sacred, a means of connecting human action with cosmic order? And if so, how much of what they contain was practical, and how much was symbolic, intended for comprehension only by those who had been trained in the mysteries of Shuruppak? Some researchers point to recurring patterns within the tablets, lists of names, measurements, and coded instructions that seem to hint at a system beyond conventional administration. Could these patterns have encoded knowledge of engineering, hydraulic systems, or even celestial observation? Others suggest that the tablets may preserve insights into social and ritual structures, illustrating how human civilization was interwoven with spiritual practice, governance, and cosmic cycles. The tantalizing question remains: what if these records were more than bureaucratic tools, and instead served as repositories of ancient wisdom that transcended their immediate context? Even more provocative are references to divine authority and instruction embedded within seemingly ordinary economic or legal records. Many tablets invoke deities, not as a mere formality, but in a manner that suggests guidance, oversight, or the transmission of sacred law. Was the inclusion of divine language a reflection of piety, or did it serve a dual purpose, codifying knowledge and authority in a way that bridged the earthly and the cosmic? Could the scribes of Shuruppak have been guardians of knowledge considered too powerful to leave exposed, transmitting it cautiously to future generations? As we study these artifacts today, it is difficult not to sense the intention behind them. The Shuruppak tablets survive not by accident but by design, carefully inscribed, preserved, and stored, a silent testament to human diligence and curiosity. They beckon us to consider that in early Sumer, knowledge, whether administrative, spiritual, or technological, was inseparable from its custodians, protected through ritual, secrecy, and meticulous record-keeping. What else might these clay tablets contain that we have not yet deciphered, and how much of this wisdom has been lost or remains hidden in plain sight? Standing before a collection of Shuruppak tablets in a modern museum or within an excavation site, one is struck by the stillness of the clay and the weight of the centuries. The inscriptions, etched in careful cuneiform, speak across millennia, inviting us to ponder not only the lives of those who created them, but the knowledge they intended to preserve. Were these tablets merely the product of bureaucracy and devotion, or were they vessels of something far greater? Ideas, observations, and wisdom that even today seem almost forbidden, waiting for those patient enough to read, interpret, and understand? The Shuruppak tablets endure as both record and enigma, bridging the ordinary and the extraordinary. They remind us that the earliest civilizations may have possessed knowledge that straddled practical, spiritual, and cosmic domains, preserved deliberately in forms that challenge modern comprehension. And as we peer into their carefully inscribed surfaces, we are left with a question that resonates as strongly now as it did thousands of years ago. What secrets of Sumerian civilization, of human ingenuity and understanding, still lie hidden within these unassuming tablets, waiting to be discovered? From the clay tablets of Shuruppak, where human diligence met divine instruction, our exploration now lifts our gaze skyward, to the stars that have fascinated humanity since time immemorial. Imagine the night sky over ancient Sumer 5,000 years ago, an endless canopy of points of light, seemingly fixed yet subtly shifting over time. Above the cities of Uruk, Ur, and Nippur, these stars were not mere decoration. They were part of a living framework through which the Sumerians understood the cosmos, time, and their place within it. How could a civilization so long ago, without telescopes or modern instruments, chart the heavens with a precision that continues to intrigue scholars today? Evidence for Sumerian astronomical observation is found in both artifacts and texts. Clay tablets, etched with careful cuneiform symbols, contain star lists, constellations, and references to celestial phenomena such as the phases of the moon, the cycles of planets, and eclipses. Among these records are detailed observations of Venus, which the Sumerians associated with the goddess Inanna, as well as calculations that hint at a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of lunar and solar cycles. These tablets reveal not only an interest in the sky, but an ability to track it systematically, suggesting that early Sumerians may have been some of the first human astronomers. Some tablets even suggest the division of the sky into sections, possibly precursors to the modern zodiac. Constellations were given names linked to mythology, divine figures, and symbolic creatures, each with narrative significance and practical use. Yet the precision of these alignments raises questions. How did the Sumerians achieve such accuracy in mapping stars? What methods allowed them to predict celestial events, chart the movements of planets, or reconcile lunar months with the solar year? Were these techniques purely observational, relying on careful tracking over decades, or did they possess insights now lost to history? Archaeological evidence further hints at the integration of astronomy into urban and religious life. Temples, ziggurats, and ceremonial structures in cities like Nippur and Ur appear aligned with cardinal points or key celestial events. Some researchers suggest that temple architecture functioned as an instrument for observation, allowing priests to mark solstices, equinoxes, or the heliacal rising of particular stars. Could Sumerian astronomers have used these buildings not only for worship, but as tools to study the sky, creating an intersection of ritual, urban planning, and scientific observation that was both practical and sacred? One of the most intriguing aspects of Sumerian astronomy is the apparent record of planetary cycles. Venus, in particular, was tracked with remarkable consistency. its appearances and disappearances noted in texts linked to the goddess Inanna. Other celestial bodies, including Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, were observed with enough precision to anticipate seasonal changes and perhaps guide agricultural planning. How did the Sumerians achieve this without lenses or advanced instruments? Did they rely solely on naked eye observation, or were there techniques, alignments, or devices that augmented their ability to see and predict patterns in the heavens? Speculative theories have emerged to explain the depth of this knowledge. Some suggest that Sumerian astronomers encoded their observations within myths and rituals, using symbolic storytelling as a way to preserve complex astronomical data across generations. Others propose that ceremonial structures and city layouts were designed as a reflection of the cosmos itself, with earthly architecture mirroring the arrangement of stars and planets. Could the careful mapping of temples, ziggurats, and sacred spaces have functioned as a terrestrial star map, encoding celestial knowledge in stone and mud brick for both ritualistic and practical purposes? Another layer of mystery lies in the connection between astronomy and mathematics. The Sumerians developed a sexagesimal system, based on the number 60, that facilitated complex calculations, including the division of hours, angles, and time cycles. Some scholars argue that this numerical sophistication may have been directly applied to tracking celestial motions, suggesting that mathematics and observation were inseparable in the pursuit of understanding the sky. Could the Sumerians have been using early forms of predictive models, a precursor to astronomical tables, encoded in the very tablets and inscriptions we now study? Yet despite these achievements, the exact methods remain elusive. Modern researchers can reconstruct some calculations, but many questions persist. How much observational data was lost to time? Were there techniques or instruments that have vanished without a trace? And most intriguingly, could there have been knowledge encoded in ways we have yet to interpret? Astronomical patterns, calendrical systems, or cosmological insights deliberately concealed within ritual, myth, and architecture? Standing beneath the night sky today, one can imagine the Sumerians gazing upward with the same wonder and curiosity. Their stars were guides, markers, and divine mirrors, each point of light holding significance in both spiritual and practical terms. Their observations shaped not only religious practice but governance, agriculture, and social order. And yet, the mystery endures. How did this civilization, emerging from the banks of the Euphrates, develop such a detailed and enduring understanding of the cosmos? Sumerian astronomy challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about ancient knowledge. It suggests a civilization capable of sophisticated observation, symbolic encoding, and mathematical reasoning long before the advent of classical science. But much remains unknown. How did they reconcile myth and measurement? How much of their celestial knowledge was transmitted orally, hidden in symbolic forms, or encoded in structures across their cities? And what might still lie undiscovered, hidden in clay tablets, temple alignments, or patterns in the night sky, waiting for a careful eye to reveal it? The Sumerians looked up and recorded the heavens not merely as a passive reflection of wonder, but as an active map of time, divinity, and order. Even today, their observations resonate with mystery, prompting questions that bridge science, spirituality, and history. As we trace the paths of stars, moons, and planets across the skies they once observed, we are left with a sense of awe and an enduring question. What secrets of the cosmos did the Sumerians truly understand, and how much of their celestial knowledge has been lost to the passage of millennia? From the deluge of mythic memory recorded in the Epic of Gilgamesh, our exploration turns from the heavens and floods to the human body itself, where the Sumerians displayed a remarkable blend of observation, skill, and practical knowledge. In the libraries of ancient Mesopotamia, clay tablets reveal a world of medicine that challenges our assumptions about early civilization. These texts, inscribed in cuneiform and preserved through millennia, describe treatments, surgical procedures, and pharmacological remedies in a level of detail that continues to astonish modern scholars. How could a culture, thousands of years before modern medical science, possess such a sophisticated understanding of the human body and its ailments? Many of the surviving tablets are diagnostic manuals, cataloging symptoms, diseases, and possible treatments. They list herbal preparations, poultices, and even complex combinations of minerals and natural compounds, sometimes specifying precise measurements and methods of administration. Among these texts are descriptions of injuries, broken bones, and wounds, with instructions for splinting, bandaging, and, in certain cases, procedures that resemble surgical intervention. Some texts even describe cranial injuries, abscesses, or methods for draining fluid, suggesting a surprisingly practical grasp of anatomy and pathology. Could it be that these were not merely trial-and-error remedies, but part of a systematically developed medical tradition, carefully observed, tested, and refined over generations? The Sumerians viewed medicine as a complex interplay of physical and spiritual forces. Illness was often interpreted as both a natural phenomenon and a manifestation of divine or malevolent influence. Treatments, therefore, could involve a combination of practical application, herbal or surgical, and ritual incantation. Priests and healers might recite prayers, invoke protective deities, or perform symbolic acts alongside the physical remedies. Could this dual approach indicate a more holistic understanding than we might expect, one in which body, mind, and environment were considered inseparable in the process of healing? Among the most striking examples are tablets that describe techniques resembling surgical procedures. References to lancing abscesses, stitching wounds, and even rudimentary forms of tumor removal appear alongside lists of antiseptic herbs and instructions for immobilization of fractures. Scholars have debated whether these techniques were commonly practiced or reserved for special cases, yet their presence indicates an empirical knowledge of human anatomy and surgical intervention that is remarkable for the period. How did the Sumerians acquire such knowledge, and why did they record it so meticulously on fragile clay tablets? Pharmacology, too, was highly developed. The texts catalog dozens of plants, resins, minerals, and animal products, often combined in formulas intended to treat specific conditions. Some remedies show an understanding of dosage, preparation, and method of application, hinting at careful experimentation and observation. For instance, poultices to reduce inflammation, infusions to combat fever, or compounds to ease pain reflect a sophisticated empirical approach. Were these practices the product of centuries of observation, trial, and refinement, transmitted orally and then committed to clay for permanence? Or could some knowledge have been considered sacred, encoded in symbolic language to be accessed only by trained practitioners? Intriguingly, certain texts suggest awareness of internal structures of the body, references to vessels, organs, and physiological processes that echo anatomical understanding far ahead of their time. While much of this knowledge was couched in mystical or symbolic language, the precision of description raises questions about its origin. Did the Sumerians develop this understanding solely through careful observation of the sick and injured, or might there have been knowledge derived from other, now lost methods of inquiry or instruction? The context in which these tablets were found adds to their mystery. Libraries and temple complexes served as repositories not only of religious and administrative records, but also of medical knowledge. Priests, scholars, and physicians would have had access to these collections, suggesting an organized system for preserving and transmitting medical practice. How many techniques and remedies were lost over time, and how much was deliberately protected as specialized knowledge? The very act of inscribing these texts in cuneiform ensured their survival, yet it also posed a barrier, readable only by those literate in the complex script, possibly restricting access to the initiated. Speculative interpretations have arisen regarding the origins and breadth of Sumerian medical knowledge. Some researchers suggest that their understanding of anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology implies observational methods or insights that remain unexplained by conventional historical models. Could there have been methods of experimentation, record-keeping, or apprenticeship so refined that these early physicians achieved results comparable in some ways to practices developed millennia later? And if so, why has so much of this knowledge seemingly vanished, leaving tantalizing fragments on clay tablets? Even the symbolic aspects of Sumerian medicine invite reflection. The blending of incantation and remedy, spiritual and physical intervention, hints at a worldview in which disease was not merely mechanical, but interconnected with the cosmos and divine order. Healing was therefore both practical and metaphysical, requiring understanding of cause, effect, and the unseen forces that influenced health. Could this perspective have offered an integrated approach to medicine that modern science, despite its technological advances, has only partially recaptured? Standing before a Sumerian medical tablet, one is struck by the meticulous detail, the careful notation of ingredients, symptoms, and methods. Each mark of the stylus speaks across millennia, a testament to human observation, intellect, and the quest to preserve knowledge. The Sumerians were documenting not just remedies but understanding, combining empirical observation with spiritual insight in ways that remain enigmatic. The mystery of Sumerian medicine lies not only in what they knew, but in what remains hidden. How much of their knowledge has been lost to time, and how much survives waiting to be decoded? Were they closer to understanding the body, disease, and treatment than we give them credit for? And if fragments of their medical and surgical wisdom persist in these clay tablets, what might we still learn from these silent witnesses of human ingenuity? Ingenuity that thrived 5,000 years ago along the banks of the Euphrates. As the sun begins to dip beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, one place still stands as a testament to the Sumerians' devotion, architectural brilliance, and their reverence for the divine. The great temple of Nanna, also known as the Anunnaki, was once a towering structure in the heart of Ur, the city that rose as a beacon of Sumerian power, culture, and religion. Today, its ruins remain a poignant reminder of a civilization whose mysteries have echoed down the centuries. The towering Ziggurat, dedicated to the moon god Nanna, or Sin as he was also known, was more than just a place of worship. It was the spiritual and political heart of Ur, and its enigma continues to puzzle archaeologists, historians, and theologians alike. The Great Temple was an architectural marvel, built from mud brick and adorned with carvings that depicted Nanna in all his celestial majesty, rising more than 70 meters in height. The ziggurat's enormous size and complexity were designed not only to honor the moon god, but also to symbolize the connection between the heavens and the earth. The structure was constructed in multiple levels, with each tier representing a different aspect of divine hierarchy. The final, most sacred level was the sanctuary, where the statue of Nanna himself was kept, an object of immense veneration. For the Sumerians, the ziggurat was not just a temple. It was a bridge between the mortal world and the gods. As we examine the remains of this once imposing temple, the question arises: how did the Sumerians, with their relatively primitive tools and resources, manage to create such a monumental structure? The technical skill required to construct the ziggurat, with its elaborate drainage systems, intricate staircases, and vast ceremonial spaces, suggests an advanced understanding of engineering far beyond what we would expect from a society of that time. Some theorists suggest that the Sumerians' methods of construction were aided by knowledge that has not been fully understood or rediscovered. Did they possess forgotten techniques of construction, or perhaps some lost technology that allowed them to work with mud, brick, and earth in ways that have yet to be replicated? The mystery of the great Temple of Nanna goes beyond its construction and design. The very location of the temple has been the subject of intense speculation. Situated near the Euphrates River, the city of Ur was once a thriving metropolis, and its ziggurat was a focal point for the Sumerians. Yet, as centuries passed, the river's course shifted, and the city of Ur was slowly abandoned, its splendor buried beneath layers of sand and soil. What was it about this particular spot that made it so sacred? Why was Nanna, the moon god, chosen to be honored in such a grand and lasting way? And what role did the temple play in the broader religious and political life of Sumer? To answer these questions, we must look not only at the tangible remains of the ziggurat, but also at the myths and rituals that surrounded it. According to Sumerian texts, the great temple of Nanna was not simply a place where the priesthood performed their rituals. It was the site of a complex cosmology where every aspect of the universe was mirrored in the design of the temple. The moon, for example, was believed to govern time, marking the cycles of the year and the changing of seasons. The priesthood would have used the temple's alignment and architecture to track celestial events, and some suggest that the ziggurat itself may have been designed to align with the movements of the moon. Could this ancient temple have been used for astronomical purposes as well as religious ones? Could it have functioned as a kind of observatory, allowing the priests to calculate the passing of time with extreme precision? Sumerian texts also suggest that the temple was a site for the performance of elaborate rituals, many of which are described in vivid detail in the Enuma Elish and other sacred texts. One such ritual was the Nanna's descent, in which the moon god was believed to descend from the heavens and visit his earthly temple. This annual event was accompanied by offerings, prayers, and symbolic gestures that reaffirmed the connection between the divine and the mortal. What, though, were the true motivations behind these rituals? Were they simply acts of devotion? Or was there a deeper, more profound purpose hidden within the sacred acts performed at the ziggurat? Was the temple itself imbued with some secret knowledge or mystical power? One of the most tantalizing aspects of the great Temple of Nanna is its connection to the broader narrative of Sumerian religion. As the god of the moon, Nanna was associated with themes of time, fate, and destiny. His worshippers believed that the moon had the power to influence human affairs, to shape the course of history, and to grant divine favor or wrath. This belief may have played a key role in the political life of Ur, as the ruling elite sought to align themselves with Nanna's favor. Did the priests of Nanna have access to knowledge or practices that gave them insight into the workings of fate itself? Could they have used the temple to communicate with the divine, interpreting omens and signs that guided the decisions of kings and rulers? The legacy of the great Temple of Nanna also brings to light the fascinating relationship between religion and politics in Sumer. The temple was not only a religious center but also a political one, as it housed the elite priesthood, whose influence extended far beyond the confines of the sacred space. Kings and rulers often sought the blessings of Nanna to secure their rule, and it was believed that the prosperity of Ur depended on maintaining the favor of the moon god. But to what extent did the temple's priests hold real political power? Did they use their control over the temple's rituals and knowledge to exert influence over the city's rulers? And, perhaps most intriguingly, did they possess knowledge that could have been seen as both a spiritual and political tool, knowledge that may have been hidden, lost, or deliberately obscured over time? Standing amid the ruins of the great Temple of Nanna today, it is difficult not to wonder how much has been lost to history. The temple's walls, though crumbled and weathered, still stand as silent witnesses to a bygone age, a reminder of the sophisticated culture that once thrived in this ancient city. Yet, like so much of Sumerian civilization, much about the temple remains a mystery. What secrets lay hidden in its stones, waiting to be uncovered? And what knowledge about the cosmos, fate, and divine power was once held within these walls, now lost to time? As we continue our exploration of the Sumerian world, the Great Temple of Nanna serves as both a physical and symbolic gateway to the mysteries that lie beyond our reach. The answers may never be fully revealed, but the questions remain. Questions that invite us to look deeper, think more critically, and wonder at the vast expanse of knowledge that the Sumerians may have once held, and perhaps still hold, in the shadows of their ancient temple. Amidst the dust of ancient ruins, where the golden sands of Mesopotamia stretch endlessly toward the horizon, a different kind of puzzle lies buried. One not of stone or clay, but of numbers and symbols. The Sumerians, known for their incredible feats of architecture, literature, and governance, also left behind a legacy that continues to baffle scholars: their advanced mathematical system. Inscribed in cuneiform on clay tablets, these texts reveal a number system so intricate and precise that it hints at a level of sophistication that seems out of step with the time in which they were created. But how did the Sumerians develop such a system, and what is the true origin of their mathematical knowledge? Could their number system be something more, perhaps even alien in origin? The Sumerian number system, unlike the decimal system we use today, was based on the number 60, a base 60 or sexagesimal system. This choice of base is curious in itself. While most human civilizations have adopted a base 10 system, likely because we have 10 fingers, the Sumerians chose a base that seems entirely arbitrary. Today, the influence of this base 60 system can still be seen in how we measure time, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and in the 360 degrees of a circle. But why did the Sumerians settle on this seemingly unusual base? One theory suggests that the base 60 system might have emerged from practical considerations. The number 60 is highly composite, meaning it can be evenly divided by a large number of factors: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, etc., making it extremely useful for dividing objects, measuring land, or tracking celestial events. This level of utility, however, does not fully explain why the Sumerians, and later the Babylonians, chose 60 over any other number. Did they discover this number through trial and error, or was there some deeper knowledge that guided their decision? For many years, the mainstream explanation for the Sumerian number system has been that it was the product of a culture that was deeply involved in trade, astronomy, and the measurement of time and space. Indeed, much of Sumerian mathematics seems to have been driven by practical needs: measuring land for agriculture, calculating the movement of stars and planets, or determining the quantities of goods in a market. The Sumerians were, after all, pioneers in astronomical observation, developing early calendars and tracking the movements of celestial bodies with remarkable accuracy. Yet, as we delve deeper into the surviving mathematical texts, we begin to encounter anomalies. Some of these ancient tablets contain complex calculations that go far beyond the practical concerns of daily life. There are geometric formulas, complex fractions, and sophisticated methods of solving problems that would not be out of place in modern mathematics. How, in a time before written records, before the wheel was even fully developed, could a civilization possess such advanced knowledge of numbers and geometry? This question has led some researchers to propose a more speculative theory. Could the Sumerians have had access to knowledge that was not of human origin? The idea that extraterrestrial beings could have played a role in the development of Sumerian mathematics is one that has intrigued fringe theorists and alternative historians for decades. According to this theory, the Sumerians were in contact with an advanced extraterrestrial civilization, sometimes referred to as the Anunnaki, who imparted to them a knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and science far beyond what should have been possible for a Bronze Age culture. While no direct evidence exists to confirm this, certain aspects of Sumerian mathematics seem so advanced, so out of place for their time, that the theory remains an open question in the search for answers. Take, for example, the Sumerian use of advanced geometry. One of the most remarkable mathematical discoveries of the Sumerians was their understanding of the relationship between shapes and space. The Sumerians were able to calculate the areas of complex geometric figures, such as triangles and trapezoids, with accuracy that modern mathematicians would appreciate. Some of their methods for calculating the area of a circle, for example, involved using a value for pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, that was astonishingly close to the modern value of 3.14159. How did the Sumerians arrive at this value? Was it through observation, trial and error, or was there some other, more mysterious source of this knowledge? Moreover, the Sumerians were also aware of the concept of irrational numbers, those values that cannot be expressed as a simple fraction. While the ancient Egyptians and Greeks also encountered these numbers, it is curious that the Sumerians, who were not known for their philosophical writings or abstract theorizing, would possess such an understanding of mathematical concepts that would not be fully explored by later cultures for centuries. Could it be that this knowledge was passed down from a civilization far more advanced than the Sumerians themselves? Another intriguing aspect of the Sumerian mathematical system is their use of tables and algorithms, tools that closely resemble modern computational techniques. The Sumerians created extensive tables for multiplication, division, and square roots, allowing them to perform complex calculations with ease. These tables are particularly remarkable because they were often written in base 60, a system that requires an entirely different approach to calculation than our own base 10 system. The fact that the Sumerians had not only developed such advanced algorithms, but had also mastered the art of compiling and using them suggests that their mathematical knowledge was far more sophisticated than what we typically associate with ancient cultures. As we examine these mathematical texts, it's difficult not to ask, what if the origins of this knowledge were not purely human? Could the Sumerians have had access to information from a more advanced source, one that transcended the boundaries of earthly civilization? While mainstream scholars may dismiss this notion as fantasy, the unexplained complexity of the Sumerian number system continues to fuel speculation and mystery. In the end, the Sumerian mathematical texts stand as an enigma. While we can track their practical applications, measuring time, land, and celestial bodies, the true origins of their knowledge remain elusive. Were the Sumerians simply brilliant innovators, or did they inherit wisdom from a source far beyond their time? And, if so, what other mysteries might the ancient world be hiding, waiting for us to uncover? As we leave the dust of ancient Ur behind and reflect on these mathematical texts, one thing remains clear. The Sumerians' understanding of numbers and geometry was far ahead of its time. Whether this knowledge was born of human ingenuity or something more extraordinary is a question that continues to linger in the shadows of history, inviting us to look closer and wonder what secrets may still lie hidden in the ancient tablets of Sumer. Tucked away beneath the scorching sun of southern Iraq, the ruins of Eridu lie buried in the arid sands, their ancient walls and sacred spaces now shrouded in silence. Once, however, this now forgotten city was the heart of Sumerian civilization, a place of myth and mystery, where the gods themselves were said to have walked among mortals as archaeologists slowly unearth the city's remnants. A fascinating question lingers in the air. Was Eridu merely an ordinary city, or does its past contain secrets that defy our understanding of ancient history? Eridu's location is in the lowlands of Mesopotamia, near the banks of the ancient Euphrates River, an area that once was lush and teeming with life. Today, the city is little more than a scattering of ruins, but those who have studied it closely understand that Eridu was once far more than a mere settlement. According to Sumerian tradition, Eridu was the first city created by the gods, the very cradle of civilization. It was here, the stories say, that the first king was chosen, and where the first temple to the god Enki, lord of wisdom and water, was built. Enki's temple, which was said to be one of the largest and most magnificent structures in the ancient world, was located at the heart of the city, symbolizing the divine order that the Sumerians believed governed their lives. But while the mythic status of Eridu is well documented in Sumerian texts, the archaeological evidence we have today paints a picture of a city that was constantly evolving, perhaps in ways that even its creators did not fully understand. The ruins show layers of occupation, suggesting a long and complex history, but they also leave us with more questions than answers. What happened to Eridu? How did this once great city come to be lost to time, and what lies buried beneath its ancient streets? One of the most compelling aspects of Eridu's history is its role as a religious center. According to the Sumerian king list, Eridu was not only the first city, but also the home of the first kings, beings who were said to have ruled with divine guidance. The kingship of Eridu, according to the Sumerian texts, was passed down directly from the gods themselves, suggesting that this city was seen as the spiritual center of Sumer and perhaps the entire ancient world. The city's original temple, dedicated to Enki, was not only the largest in the region, but also one of the first religious structures ever built in the ancient Near East. It's difficult to overstate the significance of Eridu's religious importance. It was here that the Sumerians believed their relationship with the gods was forged, through sacred rituals, sacrifices, and offerings that connected the earthly realm with the divine. Yet, for all its grandeur and divine associations, Eridu's physical remains suggest a different reality. What was once a sprawling, thriving city gradually fell into decline. By the time of the Akkadian Empire, the city had already begun to lose its luster, its temples abandoned, its streets empty. The rise of new cities, such as Ur and Uruk, began to overshadow Eridu, and by the time of the Babylonian Empire, the once great city had all but vanished from the map. The question remains, why? Was it simply a natural shift in the course of history, or was there something more to Eridu's disappearance? Something perhaps tied to its mythic origins? One possibility that has intrigued scholars is the idea that Eridu was abandoned due to environmental changes. Some researchers have suggested that the city's location near the Euphrates River made it vulnerable to periodic flooding and shifts in the river's course. Ancient records describe the periodic rise and fall of the river, and it's not hard to imagine how such events might have disrupted Eridu's prosperity. If the city's lifeblood, the river, had become less reliable, the once thriving metropolis may have gradually been abandoned as its inhabitants sought more stable conditions elsewhere. But as with many ancient mysteries, there's another possibility. Could there have been something more sinister at play? Perhaps Eridu's fall was not the result of environmental or political factors, but something more profound, an event that caused the city to be abandoned, its sacred sites left to be reclaimed by the desert. Some suggest that Eridu's decline may have been tied to the fading power of the gods themselves, as the Sumerian religion lost its dominance and new deities and cities arose to take its place. In this view, the destruction of Eridu represents the death of an era, the death of a city that, according to myth, was never meant to last. The ruins of Eridu also present an enigma in their architecture. As excavations continue, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of large-scale construction projects, including vast ziggurats and temples dedicated to Enki. The scale and precision of these structures suggest that the builders possessed a level of architectural knowledge that may have been far ahead of their time. The quality of the craftsmanship in Eridu's temples and buildings raises the question of how such advanced techniques were developed. Were the Sumerians simply brilliant architects, or did they inherit this knowledge from another, more ancient source? Furthermore, the construction of Eridu's religious center, its grand temple to Enki, adds another layer of intrigue. The Sumerians believed that their gods communicated with them through signs and omens, and many of the city's religious structures were built in alignment with celestial bodies, reinforcing the idea that the divine order was etched into the very fabric of the universe. Was this divine inspiration, or were the architects of Eridu in possession of ancient astronomical knowledge that allowed them to align their temples with such precision? Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Eridu's story is its connection to the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this ancient text, the hero Gilgamesh seeks out the wise man Utnapishtim, who is said to have survived a great flood, a flood that may be linked to the very collapse of Eridu itself. Could the flood described in the Epic of Gilgamesh have been more than just a myth? Was it perhaps a memory of a real event that affected Eridu and the surrounding region? An event so catastrophic that it left an indelible mark on the consciousness of the Sumerians? The flood, after all, was said to have destroyed all of civilization, with Eridu at its heart. As we look at the ruins of Eridu today, we are left with more questions than answers. Was it truly the first city, the birthplace of human civilization? Or was it merely one of many cities in the ancient world whose story has been lost to the ages? The mystery of Eridu, with its divine origins and mysterious disappearance, continues to haunt us. And as the sands of time shift, who knows what other secrets lie buried beneath its ancient walls, waiting to be uncovered? What truly happened to the lost city of Eridu? Is it the mythic birthplace of humanity? Or is it simply a reminder of a civilization that reached too far, too fast? Whatever the answers may be, the ruins of Eridu continue to stand as a testament to the enduring mystery of the ancient world, its past forever locked in the sands of time. Deep within the ancient ruins of the city of Ur, one of the oldest and most important cities of Sumer, lies a relic that has long intrigued historians, scholars, and mystics alike. It is not a towering ziggurat or a grand temple, but a simple, inscribed stone tablet that bears the laws of Ur-Nammu, the king of Ur. Yet, despite its modest appearance, the Code of Ur-Nammu has carried with it an enduring mystery, one that connects the worlds of law, politics, and divine favor. The Code of Ur-Nammu is one of the earliest known legal codes in history, predating even the famous Code of Hammurabi by several centuries. It was created by King Ur-Nammu, who ruled the Sumerian city-state of Ur around 2100 BCE. This stone tablet, often referred to as one of the most important legal documents of the ancient world, is a testament to the sophistication of Sumerian civilization and their understanding of justice and governance. But what is perhaps most remarkable about this code is not just its age or its role in shaping future legal systems. It is the way it ties together divine mandate and human law in a manner that feels almost otherworldly. The Code of Ur-Nammu, like many legal systems throughout history, offers a set of laws designed to regulate behavior, ensure fairness, and establish order. It deals with a wide range of topics, from marriage and slavery to bodily harm and theft. The laws are not merely instructions on how to punish criminals, but rather they emphasize the restoration of balance, a concept that was central to Sumerian life. The idea of mishpat, the restoration of order, was woven into every aspect of Sumerian law. For the Sumerians, law was not just a social construct. It was a cosmic principle that reflected the divine order of the universe. The Code of Ur-Nammu begins with a clear assertion of divine authority. If a man commits a murder, that man shall be put to death. If a man commits a robbery, he shall be put to death. These were not just secular laws. They were the laws of the gods, handed down to the king by divine decree. In this sense, the code could be seen as more than a set of rules. It was, in a way, the very will of the gods manifest on earth. The king, as the enforcer of this code, was not simply a ruler, but a vessel through which divine justice flowed. The question arises, did Ur-Nammu's legal wisdom come solely from human observation and experience, or did the gods themselves impart these laws to him? This connection between law and divinity is not merely rhetorical. Ur-Nammu's code appears to have been presented as a reflection of the will of the gods, making it not just a tool of governance, but a sacred document that bound both the king and his subjects to the divine will. But if Ur-Nammu was acting as the intermediary between the gods and the people, it begs the question, did his code serve as a literal channel for divine authority? Or was it a symbolic representation of an ancient society's attempt to align itself with cosmic order? While the details of the Code of Ur-Nammu itself are relatively straightforward, the larger implications of its creation have long been a source of debate. One of the most striking features of this legal code is its emphasis on the protection of the weak and vulnerable, women, children, and slaves. Unlike many later legal codes, which focused largely on the rights of the elite, Ur-Nammu's code was remarkably egalitarian. For example, if a man were to strike a woman and cause her harm, he was required to pay a fine. Similarly, if a man were to destroy the property of another, he was held accountable. This concern for justice on behalf of those at the lower rungs of society is one of the most progressive aspects of the code, suggesting that Ur-Nammu's rule may have been, at least in part, an attempt to impose a system of fairness that transcended class and social status. Yet, for all the wisdom and apparent fairness of Ur-Nammu's laws, there is still an element of mystery surrounding their origin. Was Ur-Nammu truly inspired by the gods in his creation of this code? Or were these laws merely a reflection of the Sumerians' evolving political and social systems? Some scholars have suggested that the code may have been more pragmatic than divine, the product of a king attempting to consolidate power in a time of societal transition. Ur-Nammu came to power at a time when the once mighty Sumerian city-states were fragmenting and the old ways of governance were crumbling. Could the code have been a means for the king to reinforce his authority and ensure stability in the face of mounting challenges? There is another layer to this mystery that continues to captivate historians and enthusiasts alike. The Code of Ur-Nammu is often cited as an early example of eye for an eye justice, though it is somewhat different in its application. Unlike later legal systems, where retribution was often viewed as a straightforward form of justice, Ur-Nammu's code focuses heavily on restitution rather than punishment. A thief, for example, would be required to pay restitution, but not necessarily through a direct, violent punishment. This concept of restorative justice, where the aim is to restore balance and harmony, seems to point toward a more enlightened and nuanced understanding of law, one that may not be entirely of this world. And yet, there remains a deeper mystery at the heart of this ancient legal system. Some have suggested that Ur-Nammu's code may have been inspired by earlier, lost systems of law, perhaps ones that existed before recorded history. There are similarities between Ur-Nammu's code and other ancient legal systems, such as those of the Babylonians and even the ancient Egyptians. Could it be that the Sumerians inherited this wisdom from a forgotten civilization, or perhaps even from sources beyond Earth? Were the Sumerians in possession of ancient knowledge, passed down through generations, about how to govern in a way that respected both divine and human order? Some fringe theories speculate that Ur-Nammu's code might have been influenced by extraterrestrial beings, suggesting that such a sophisticated understanding of justice could not have been developed by humans alone. What is clear is that the Code of Ur-Nammu represents a monumental achievement in the history of law, and it has endured as a symbol of both human ambition and divine authority. Whether it was the product of divine inspiration or simply a reflection of the wisdom of an ancient ruler, the code's connection to the larger mystery of Sumerian civilization is undeniable. Did the gods indeed whisper their laws to Ur-Nammu? Or was it the ruler's own vision of justice that shaped the future of Sumer and beyond? The Code of Ur-Nammu remains an enduring enigma, a legal code forged in the ancient past that still echoes with questions about the origins of law, governance, and the divine. In the heart of modern-day Iraq, amid the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, a small, unassuming clay jar sits in a museum, its significance far outweighing its size. This object, known as the Baghdad Battery, has captured the imaginations of archaeologists, historians, and even inventors for decades. What could this seemingly simple artifact, discovered in 1938, reveal about ancient technology? Was it merely a vessel for storage, or could it represent evidence of a lost, much more advanced form of knowledge? Was the Sumerians' understanding of electricity far more sophisticated than we ever imagined? The Baghdad Battery was found in a site near the ancient city of Ctesiphon, just outside Baghdad, by a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig. It consists of a small ceramic jar about 5 inches tall, sealed with a stopper, and containing a copper cylinder inside. This copper cylinder houses a thin iron rod, which runs down the center of the jar. The jar, with its unusual internal construction, appears simple enough at first glance. But closer inspection of the object has led to a fascinating question. Could this artifact have been an ancient battery, capable of generating a small electrical charge? It is important to note that this theory, though intriguing, is still debated among scholars. Conventional wisdom holds that the Baghdad Battery was likely used for storage, perhaps as a container for scrolls or other items, rather than for generating electricity. However, the device's design has led some researchers to speculate that it could have been capable of generating a weak electric current when filled with an acidic liquid, like vinegar or wine. In such a scenario, the copper and iron could act as a rudimentary galvanic cell, precursors to the batteries we use today. What makes the Baghdad Battery even more perplexing is the context in which it was found. Ctesiphon, the city near which it was discovered, was once the capital of the Parthian Empire, a great political power in ancient Mesopotamia. The battery itself, however, dates back much earlier, to the period of the Sumerians, around 2,000 years before the construction of Ctesiphon. Could the ancient Sumerians have had a sophisticated understanding of electricity? And if so, what purpose might they have used it for? As we delve deeper into the mystery of the Baghdad Battery, we must also consider the possibility that this artifact was not an isolated invention, but part of a broader technological tradition that has been lost to time. Ancient Sumerians, known for their advances in astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, might have developed a rudimentary understanding of electricity far earlier than modern scholars are willing to admit. Could the Sumerians have used electricity for practical purposes, such as lighting, electroplating, or healing? The evidence is scant, but the implications are immense. One possible explanation for the Baghdad Battery is that it could have been used as a galvanic device for electroplating. Electroplating, the process of coating a metal object with a thin layer of another metal using an electric current, was later rediscovered in the 19th century. The use of electricity in this way could have been useful for decorating precious objects, or even for creating intricate jewelry. The idea that the Sumerians might have been using electricity to create fine works of art is tantalizing. especially given the advanced craftsmanship found in their jewelry and sculptures. However, some researchers argue that the battery could have served as a tool for religious or ceremonial purposes, rather than for practical use. It is well documented that the Sumerians used various forms of ritualistic practices and objects in their worship of the gods, and the idea that a divine or spiritual significance could be attached to an object capable of generating electrical energy is not entirely out of the question. Could the battery have been used in rituals where the sensation of an electric shock was seen as a divine experience, or as a means of connecting with the gods in some transcendental way? This theory suggests that electricity, far from being a purely utilitarian force, could have been viewed as a mystical or supernatural power, one that might have been harnessed for purposes far beyond what we might understand today. Then there is the possibility, more speculative in nature, that the Baghdad Battery is evidence of an advanced civilization whose knowledge was lost over time, perhaps even before the rise of Sumerian culture. Some fringe theories propose that ancient civilizations, such as Atlantis or those from distant regions, may have passed on knowledge of electrical technology that was lost due to a cataclysmic event or cultural collapse. Could the Sumerians, in their advanced society, have inherited this knowledge and created devices like the Baghdad Battery? And if they did, what happened to that knowledge? Yet, despite all of the intrigue surrounding the Baghdad Battery, there is still no definitive evidence to prove any of these theories. There are those who argue that the object's purpose was far more mundane. They suggest it may have been a simple vessel used for storage, without any true electrical properties. After all, many objects from antiquity have been misinterpreted in the past, only to be later recognized as something far simpler than initially thought. Could the Baghdad Battery have been just a simple container, misjudged by modern researchers through the lens of our own understanding of technology? As we consider the many theories surrounding the Baghdad Battery, one thing remains clear: there is still much we do not know about the technological capabilities of ancient civilizations. Were the Sumerians truly pioneers of electrical knowledge, or was this just a coincidence, a misunderstanding based on the design of an artifact that we have yet to fully comprehend? The Baghdad Battery continues to be a mystery, one that challenges the limits of what we think we know about the ancient world. Is it possible that the ancient Sumerians had access to technologies far beyond what we currently believe? Or is the Baghdad Battery just another enigmatic relic whose true purpose remains hidden by the sands of time? The questions linger, and the mystery endures, inviting us to look beyond the surface and wonder if there are still forgotten secrets waiting to be uncovered beneath the ruins of Mesopotamia. In the shadowed recesses of the ancient Sumerian world, buried beneath the sands of time, a collection of ritual masks beckons us toward a mystery that is as old as the civilization itself. Crafted with care and intention, these masks, some depicting the faces of gods, others of enigmatic beings, offer us a glimpse into the Sumerians' complex belief system, a world where the line between the divine and the mortal was often blurred. Their purpose remains a subject of debate among scholars, but one thing is certain: the masks were not mere decorations. They were imbued with purpose, power, and meaning. The masks, discovered in the ruins of various Sumerian cities, are striking both in their intricacy and their mystery. Most are crafted from materials like clay, limestone, and copper, designed to resemble the faces of deities or important figures. Some are lifelike, with delicate features and exaggerated expressions that convey strength or serenity, while others take on more abstract forms, their features distorted, their expressions unsettling. It's clear that these were not simple art objects. They were created for a reason, likely deeply embedded in the religious and cultural practices of the time. Many of these masks were found in temples or burial sites, often associated with ceremonial offerings or rites. The Sumerians were a deeply religious people, and their gods were not distant, abstract concepts, but beings that interacted with the world, influencing the lives of the living in powerful and mysterious ways. Could these masks have been used in rituals to invoke the presence of the gods? Were they worn by priests or priestesses during sacred ceremonies to facilitate communication with the divine? One theory suggests that the masks were used to embody the gods during religious rituals. In Sumerian culture, it was common for priests to assume the role of a god, acting as intermediaries between the divine and the human world. Could the masks have served as a means of transforming the wearer into a god or divine messenger? The intricate details of the masks, especially those that depict the most revered deities, hint at a purposeful design meant to channel a divine presence. By wearing a mask, could one connect with the powerful spiritual forces that governed the cosmos? The design of the masks offers further clues. Many of the masks depict gods with prominent eyes, often large, staring eyes that seem to peer into the soul. Eyes were a powerful symbol in Sumerian culture, associated with perception, wisdom, and the power of sight. The oversized eyes on these masks may have been intended to represent the heightened vision of the divine, the ability to see beyond the physical world into the realms of the gods. Perhaps the wearers of these masks were believed to temporarily possess the power to see beyond mortal limits, gaining access to knowledge or divine favor. Yet, despite the artistry and craftsmanship of these masks, their exact purpose remains elusive. Some researchers speculate that they were part of a larger ritualistic tradition, designed to invoke specific deities associated with fertility, war, or the afterlife. The Sumerians believed that the gods were deeply intertwined with the forces of nature, and that certain rituals could influence the elements or the fate of a society. Could the masks have been used during agricultural ceremonies to ensure a bountiful harvest? Or perhaps they were central to funerary practices, used to guide the deceased into the afterlife by invoking divine protection. Another theory suggests that the masks may have been used as tools of transformation in the context of shamanistic practices. Shamans, or spiritual leaders, in many ancient cultures were believed to have the ability to transcend the physical world and communicate with spirits. Could the Sumerians have used these masks as a way to enter altered states of consciousness, allowing them to cross into the spiritual realm? The masks could have served as an aid in these journeys, acting as a focal point for the shaman's spiritual transformations. If this theory holds any weight, it would mean that these masks were not just worn, they were wielded, used as instruments of divine power. Adding to the intrigue is the fact that some of these masks seem to exhibit features that are not typically associated with the Sumerian pantheon. Faces that resemble strange, otherworldly creatures, beings with elongated features or expressions that suggest they do not belong to this world, raise further questions. Who or what were these beings? Could they represent gods from another time or place? Or could they be manifestations of beings not human, not even of this earth? Some have even speculated that the masks could represent extraterrestrial beings, visitors from the stars who were worshipped as gods. While this theory remains speculative at best, it highlights the deep fascination with the unknown that these artifacts evoke. Then, of course, there are the masks found in the royal tombs of the Sumerian kings. Were these masks used as part of the funerary rites, placed on the faces of the deceased to ensure a safe passage to the afterlife? The elaborate nature of these tombs and the inclusion of such masks suggest that the Sumerians believed in an afterlife where the soul would continue to interact with the gods, a belief that may have influenced the creation of these ceremonial objects. The idea of the mask as a bridge between the mortal and the divine is not unique to Sumerian culture. Across the ancient world, masks were used to invoke spirits, gods, or the forces of nature. but the Sumerian masks seem to hold a particular significance. Their design, their connection to the divine, and their placement in sacred spaces suggest that they were far more than simple religious accoutrements. They were tools, instruments through which the divine could be invoked, interacted with, and perhaps even controlled. As we reflect on the mystery of the Sumerian ritual masks, we are left with more questions than answers. Could these masks truly have been used to communicate with the gods? Were they part of a larger, more complex system of belief that we have yet to fully understand? And what of the strange, otherworldly features of some of these masks? Are they simply artistic interpretations, or do they point to a deeper, unknown truth about Sumerian cosmology? The masks remain silent, their mystery unyielding. And as the dust of centuries continues to settle over the ruins of Sumer, the faces of the gods continue to stare out at us, waiting for us to uncover the secrets they hold. Nestled in the heart of Mesopotamia, in what is now modern-day Iraq, lies a site that once reverberated with the echoes of an ancient civilization, the ancient city of Eshnunna. On a quiet hillock called Tel Asmar, a discovery was made in 1933 that would stir the minds of archaeologists, historians, and scholars for decades. It was a hoard, a collection of sacred, intricately carved statues that seemed to bridge the gap between the mortal and divine. The objects, now collectively known as the Tel Asmar Hoard, offer a glimpse into a world long past, but one that remains veiled in mystery. The Tel itself, a raised mound of earth, holds little more than the ghostly traces of what once was, a city of bustling temples and palaces, now reduced to crumbled stones. Yet beneath this quiet landscape, buried in the earth for thousands of years, a trove of life-sized statues was waiting to be unearthed. These figures, made of limestone and alabaster, depict men and women in various forms of worship, eyes wide with awe, hands clasped in devotion, and expressions that suggest a deep, almost supernatural reverence. There are also elaborate animal figures, perhaps representing creatures of myth or sacred symbolism. But it is the human figures that truly captivate the imagination. The Tel Asmar Hoard consists of 12 statues, 11 of them representing what appear to be worshippers, and one that is distinctively different. A tall, imposing figure with a helmet-like headdress and a posture that exudes power. The faces of the statues are mesmerizingly wide-eyed, with pupils carved in a manner so meticulous they seem almost alive. The precision of the craftsmanship is awe-inspiring, with every wrinkle, every fold of clothing rendered with astonishing detail. Some scholars have speculated that these statues were meant to represent actual people, possibly high-ranking priests or members of the royal elite, while others suggest they were not portraits at all, but idealized, almost otherworldly representations of the faithful. However, what is most striking about these figures, and what has led to centuries of speculation, is their uncanny, almost unsettling, lifelike quality. The exaggerated wide eyes are perhaps the most haunting aspect of the statues. Were they intended to symbolize a deep connection to the divine, an eternal state of worship and vigilance? Or do the eyes, fixed forever in a state of rapt attention, suggest something more? A connection to another realm, a communication with beings beyond the human experience? The statues were found in a group, placed together in a small chamber within a temple complex, suggesting they had a ceremonial or religious function. The site itself, dedicated to the god Abu, an ancient deity associated with fertility and healing, was once a center of worship for the people of Eshnunna. Yet, despite the best efforts of archaeologists and scholars, the purpose of the Tel Asmar Hoard remains elusive. The objects, some now housed in the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, tell a compelling story, but one that raises more questions than it answers. According to mainstream scholarship, these statues were votive offerings, created as part of a long-standing Mesopotamian tradition of commissioning images that could serve as intermediaries between the worshippers and the gods. The wide-eyed expressions could be interpreted as an indication of the worshipper's desire to remain eternally vigilant, ever watchful for divine favor. Yet, even this explanation seems to only scratch the surface of the mystery. For one, the sheer quality and quantity of the statues suggest something more than mere devotion. These are not ordinary, everyday representations of the faithful. They are works of art, crafted with meticulous attention to detail, and each one seems to tell its own story. Who were these individuals? Why were they selected for such an elaborate, sacred portrayal? And what was their role within the temple complex? These are questions that remain unanswered, and for which no clear answers exist within the historical record. Moreover, there are elements of the statues that challenge conventional understanding. Take, for example, the enigmatic posture of some of the figures. One particularly striking statue is that of a figure with an unnaturally long neck and arms, a posture that seems to defy the natural proportions of the human body. Was this a deliberate artistic choice? Or could it be that these figures were meant to represent beings with supernatural characteristics, perhaps influenced by a pantheon of gods whose appearances were not bound by the limitations of human anatomy? Some have even suggested that these statues were not merely representations of human worshippers, but of something far more extraordinary, beings from another world. Could the wide, staring eyes and the elongated forms be indicative of some form of contact, whether real or symbolic, with extraterrestrial life? While such theories remain firmly on the fringe, they continue to captivate the imagination of those drawn to the mystery of the ancient world. Of course, there is another possibility, one that is perhaps more grounded in historical fact, but equally as tantalizing. Could these statues represent the intersection of different cultures and belief systems? Ancient Mesopotamia was a crossroads of peoples where Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and others all converged over millennia, each bringing their own gods and stories. The Tel Asmar hoard might be a reflection of this cultural melting pot, with each figure symbolizing a different deity or spiritual archetype, and the artists who created them pulling from a variety of traditions to craft an image of divine unity. It is also worth noting that the precise dating of the statues has remained somewhat uncertain. While they are generally attributed to the early dynastic period of Sumer, around 2700 BCE, some scholars have raised questions about whether they could be older, perhaps even dating to the dawn of the Sumerian civilization itself. If this is the case, the hoard might hold secrets that could shed light on the early development of Mesopotamian religious practices and the evolution of their complex pantheon of gods. And yet, despite all the research, the Tel Asmar hoard remains enigmatic. We know that these statues were placed in a sacred space, but why were they buried so carefully, with such attention to detail, and why were they left behind? Was it a deliberate act, a ritual offering that was meant to preserve the statues for future generations, or was it a hasty abandonment, perhaps linked to the fall of Eshnunna or some cataclysmic event in the region's history? The questions multiply, but the answers remain as elusive as the ancient people who created them. As we continue to explore the mysteries of the Tel Asmar hoard, we are left with more questions than answers. Were these statues simply works of art, created to honor the gods? Or do they carry a deeper, more hidden meaning, one that might connect the people of ancient Sumer with forces far beyond their understanding? The mystery remains unsolved, and the enigma of the Tel Asmar hoard lingers, waiting for the next clue, the next breakthrough that might bring us closer to understanding the true purpose of these remarkable statues. In the end, we are left to wonder, What did the creators of these statues know that we do not? What secrets might still be buried in the ruins of Enigma, waiting to be uncovered? And as we move deeper into the shadows of ancient Sumer, leaving behind the enigmas of the previous chapter, another artifact begins to rise slowly from the darkness, something delicate, luminous, and profoundly human. Something that speaks not with stone or clay, but with music. They were found buried in silence, resting beneath the sands of southern Iraq for nearly 5 millennia, discovered in the royal cemetery of Ur, one of the oldest and most mysterious necropolises on Earth. The gold Lyres of Ur emerged from the earth like frozen echoes of a vanished world. Their frames, shaped from wood now long decayed, were once adorned with sheets of gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and intricate mosaics. But their beauty was not their strangest feature. They were instruments, musical tools, placed beside the remains of attendants and royal figures, positioned as though they were waiting to be played one final time. Imagine the scene as archaeologists first brushed away the soil, a golden bull's head emerging from the dust, its lapis beard shimmering faintly under the desert sun, as though awakening after thousands of years. The Lyre's soundbox, crushed and fragile, still held enough form to suggest its original grandeur. And around it, the silent remains of those who once served in the royal court of Sumer. But why would a civilization invest so much precious material into musical instruments? Why were they buried with kings, and with those who followed the kings into death? The gold Lyres of Ur invite us into a world where music was not simply entertainment, it was a bridge between realms. Historians agree that music played a central role in Sumerian culture. Their hymns are some of the oldest written music known today. Kings, priests, and priestesses used melodies in rituals, ceremonies, and offerings to the gods. Temples across Mesopotamia resonated with chants, drums, and stringed melodies, sound becoming a medium to communicate with beings beyond the mortal world. But the lyres found at Ur are not ordinary instruments. Their lavish construction suggests elite ceremonial use, likely in events where the boundary between life and death was believed to be thinner, more permeable. The royal cemetery itself is filled with curious scenes. Entire groups of attendants buried together, arranged carefully, sometimes with cups or instruments beside them. The early excavators believed these attendants willingly drank poison, choosing to follow their ruler into the afterlife. Modern scholars question this, suggesting more complex rituals, ritual anesthesia, symbolic performance, or staged funerary reenactments gone terribly real. And at the center of all this, the lyres. What songs were played as these rituals unfolded? What melodies accompanied the final moments of a royal burial? And why were the instruments placed with such precision, as if the music they produced was meant to continue in the world beyond? The workmanship of the lyres raises questions even modern experts still grapple with. The golden bull's head, carefully hammered into shape from thin sheets of pure gold, shows no signs of amateur technique. Its eyes are crafted from shell and lapis lazuli, giving an uncanny impression of awareness, of a presence looking back across time. Below its muzzle, braided strands of lapis form a beard with perfect symmetry, repeating patterns that were meaningful to the Sumerians but remain partially unreadable to us. How did artisans 4,500 years ago achieve this level of refinement? Where did they acquire the expertise to shape gold so flawlessly, or source stones from lands hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers away? We know the trade networks existed. We know craftsmanship was highly specialized, but the implication is unavoidable. These instruments represented something far more significant than decoration. They symbolized power, divinity, and access to knowledge only the elite possessed. Across cultures, music often accompanies rites of passage, but in Sumer, The connection between sound and the afterlife appears unusually strong. One theory suggests that the lyres were used to guide the souls of the deceased, harmonic offerings meant to soothe or summon divine entities tasked with receiving the dead. Another proposes that music was itself a sacred language, capable of influencing celestial forces. A more fringe idea, advanced by some independent researchers, suggests that the lyres could have had a function beyond ritual. According to this perspective, the instrument's shapes, measurements, and the symbols engraved on them encode mathematical patterns or astronomical information. The decorated panels, showing animals performing human activities, donkeys playing harps, lions serving drinks, may not be mere scenes of myth, but coded allegories pointing toward celestial cycles or metaphysical concepts. Is this interpretation too imaginative? Perhaps. But the truth remains that the Sumerians blended myth, astronomy, mathematics, and religion seamlessly. For them, the universe was a single, interconnected system. Nothing existed in isolation, not even music. So while mainstream scholars view the lyres as ritual instruments, others wonder whether their design also expresses a deeper encoded message, one that we have not yet deciphered. Remarkably, evidence of Sumerian music survives, though not directly from the lyres themselves. Clay tablets discovered across Mesopotamia record tuning methods, scales, and even early forms of musical notation. By comparing these with the reconstructed lyres, musicians and historians have attempted to recreate what Sumerian music might have sounded like. The results are haunting. Slow, resonant tones echoing across intervals unfamiliar to Western ears, filled with tension, longing, and an otherworldly stillness. When played on replicas of the gold lyres, these notes create a sound that seems both ancient and strangely modern, an echo of humanity's earliest artistic impulses. But is what we hear today truly the music that once filled the courts of Ur? Or are we merely approximating something deeper, something now lost to time? No one can say for sure. One of the most puzzling features of the lyres is the imagery that decorates them. Panels depict animals standing upright, creatures playing instruments, mythic scenes that resemble stories known from later Mesopotamian mythology. Some researchers interpret the images as simple storytelling, fables, or ceremonial symbols. Others see metaphor, the inversion of natural order to represent the journey between the mortal world and the divine, a ritual turning upside down of reality. A few, more speculative voices suggest that these scenes mirror some kind of shamanic or trance experience, visions encountered during funerary rites or sacred ceremonies. Could the musicians who played these lyres have been more than performers? Could they have acted as intermediaries between worlds, conductors of spiritual energy? It remains an open question. Today, replicas of the gold lyres are played on stages and in museums around the world. Their restored voices offer glimpses into a time when humanity was only beginning to define civilization, faith, and creative expression. Yet the true purpose of these instruments, the reason they were buried with kings, the rituals they once served, the melodies they carried into the desert night, remains elusive. Were they merely symbols of status? Were they gateways to the divine? Or were they something else entirely? Something we no longer recognize? The mystery remains, echoing softly, like a tone fading into the ancient dark.